gathering. The Honorable Minister for Information.
Your Excellency, the Vice President and Acting members of the Diplomat Corps, Ministers of State, representatives of various stakeholder groups, good morning and welcome to College of Physicians and Surgeons, where this morning, first government town hall meeting for the year 2019 is taking place. This government town hall meeting is being led by the economic management team, which is chaired by His Excellency, the Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. The theme is our status, progress, and our future. And it affords Ghana's economic management team the opportunity to update citizens on the work being done so far and to receive questions and provide responses as well as take feedback, because this administration believes in continuous engagement with citizens. Without further ado, I want to invite Professor Joam Akutufo, who is the Secretary to the EMT, to introduce the EMT proper and keynote speaker. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Good morning to you all, and good morning to the eminent EMT members who are introduced shortly. All protocols observed. Appointed by the President, I'm a member. I am the head of the EMT Secretariat. I'm assisted by our staff. Two questions that people keep asking me. What is the EMT? Is it a football club? Obviously not. Is it a group of gospel singers? And I'm sure you know the answer is no. And what does the EMT do? So what is the EMT? Well, we all know the overall directions and management of the economy. Thank you. Are vested in the presidency. EMT is not a constitutional body. Rather, it is established by the authority of the president and headed by our vice president. Membership is by appointment of the president, and to date there are 9 members. You see 8 sitting, 1 standing. The ministers who participate in the work of the EMT, in fact, do a double job because they continue in their regular role responsibilities as ministers. What does the EMT do? Well, the EMT meets weekly in our marathon 6-7 hours meeting. Visitors to our weekly meeting will attest that breaks are very limited in our meetings. And for that reason, our chief director kindly makes sure that we have abundant supply of banana and granules. Our meals often turn cold. Our meeting agenda, who determines what we discuss? The EMT agenda is largely demand-driven. It is because there's a need for it. The first point of call for cabinet on economic matters that require further discussion, in-depth analysis will come to the EMT. Ministries, departments, and agencies, institutions may also suggest agenda items. These are evaluated, and if these matters cannot be resolved at the ministerial level, we elevate the conversation to the EMT. Take, for example, DACF, District Assembly Common Fund. My lovely Toshi, I hope she's here. She comes very often to seek counsel and the benefit of the wisdom of the EMT to make sure that her allocation of funds are in alignment with the broad objectives of government. There are also invitations to or requests from different sectors of the economy. We have met traders, importers, shippers, freight forwarders, industrial associations, the AGI, Chamber of Commerce. Yes, the canoe fishermen made it there. Poultry associations, spares parts, dealers on all issues that affect the way they function. In fact, the Queen Mothers found EMT the best forum to tell us their role in local economic development and what they could do to help the 1D 1F. We also engage regularly with development partners on issues of mutual interest. What do? We meet. Obviously, it's not a chorus. The EMT likely is a policy coordination, policy implementation, and a problem-solving clinic. Our deliberations are diagnostic to get to the roots of problems. What are the impediments? What are the bottlenecks? Why are things not working one way or the other? Why are the project implementation not proceeding as expected? So when we read budgets, MDAs go away to do their own thing. In the process, all kinds of problems do arise. For investors, local and foreign, who want to set up businesses, EMT becomes a very important troubleshooting platform to address issues of bottlenecks. For institutions that are facing challenges in the execution of their duties, there are problems of institutional coordination, potential jurisdictional overlaps, or we are interested if these are just matters of severe constraints. The FDA, Food and Drug Administration, Standards Authority, PMMC will tell you that they have benefited tremendously from this conversation. At the EMT, we listen to all issues. We bring institutions together for them to unzip their problems and how we help them. The AMC has a practical focus on solving problems, getting an institution to work, and facilitating private sector activities best as we can within the confines of the law. The EMT strives for finality of decision-making and actions, never an issue that goes unresolved or hanging. Where there are no immediate solutions, the EMT often initiates research work among interested parties. We invite experts, local and foreign, from private sector and universities to inform deliberations, most of them pro bono. As an instrument of governance, EMT communicates the outcomes of their deliberations in two ways: by decision notes that go directly to the ministries, departments, and agencies in the specifics of what has to be done, and also recommendations to cabinet for cabinet action. We have a delivery unit that follows up on most of these outcomes. Clearly, the EMT is not an ordinary club. It's not a football club, or, for that matter, any singing group. Don't sit down twiddling their thumbs with incantations, hoping that problems will go away. They solve them. And now to the gentleman sitting behind. Let me introduce to you as if you haven't met them, as if you don't know them. First, it's a gentleman, the man with the Texan and spending authority. A good man to know, and sitting next to him comes at a premium. Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister of Finance. Today, Professor Jan Balfour has taken a pricey seat. MP for Wenchi and the man who steers the long-term planning affairs of the state, Professor Jan Balfour. If you are wondering why industry has returned to positive growth, turn no further than to the Minister of Trade and Industry, Honorable Alan Shama. On my right here, he comes simply as Minister of Energy. Today, he tells me he's energized to interact with you, Honorable Peter Amewu. Next to him is the irreplaceable MP for Old Tafo and Pankrono, and Mr. Responsible for Monitoring and Evaluation, Honorable Antonio Sato. If you haven't heard about him, you are living Mars. He needs little introduction. For those who believe that food is the first safeguard of peace, here is Mr. Planting for Food and Jobs. And I should add, Planting for Food and Jobs and now for exports. You must always have one in your house. He has seen it all, done it all. He comes in the EMT, the man with the most gray hair among the team. His wisdom has been instructive. Senior Minister, Honorable, Finally, you know him very well. His maxim, his belief, we cannot be doing the same thing the same way and expect to get new results. We shouldn't have difficulty understanding that. Rather, he insists, innovate, digitize. Let us use technology to leapfrog our development path. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the EMT, who gives permission to the break or not to go to break, the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Alhaji Mawudu Bawumia. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President waters the Town Hall meeting.
Thank you very much. Secretary to the EMT, the Vice President of the Republic is about addressing us.
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I stand on existing protocol. Good morning. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you some progress on the state of our economy after 2 years in government, during which we have been implementing the policies that Ghanaians voted for. This occasion also provides the economic management team an opportunity to interact with the public and to answer questions on the economy. The timing of this interaction is also important because it was only yesterday that Ghana formally and successfully completed the IMF program that we inherited in 2017. On behalf of members of the EMT, I present to you our progress, where we are and the way forward. Our presentation today, as always, is based on analysis of the data and the facts. The data will speak for itself. If you disagree, you should bring your own data and your record. But don't disagree by saying that the EMT members have big heads. You only resort to insults when you are allergic to facts. First, let me recall briefly the state of the economy we inherited and how far we have come since 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, at the heart of Ghana's recurrent economic difficulties has been the management of public finances, especially during election years, and the challenges in cleaning up the post-election mess. Our public financial management and our fiscal excesses, particularly in the run-up to the 2012 elections, was very damaging to our prospects of managing the economy that is trying to climb up the middle income ladder. The economy ended 2012 with a fiscal deficit of 12.2% of GDP, 2011 of 11.7% of GDP deficit, and 2013 of 11.7% of GDP, and 2014 of 11.9% of a fiscal deficit, before falling to 6.7% in 2015, but rose again to 9.3% in 2016. We recorded in this period, for the first time in Ghana's history, double-digit fiscal deficits in 3 consecutive years, and plunged into a deep fiscal hole. The debt pile began, debt service became burdensome on the budget, inflation soared, external trade balance worsened, and the economy became more and more vulnerable to external shocks. This poor state of public finances, weak implementation, and lack of policy credibility resulted in Ghana requesting an IMF bailout in August 2014. Since there was no meat on the bone, to fill the deep hole in public finances, government resorted to some tough fiscal measures, notably the increase in the tax burden on every conceivable consumer item and production activities. In addition to hiring freezes, there were cuts to a number of areas of spending, most notably cuts to research allowances for lecturers, nursing training allowances, teacher training allowances. By the end of 2016, the fundamentals of the economy were generally weak. Real GDP growth declined from 9.1% in 2008 and 3.4% in 2016. Growth in agriculture was declining, growth in industry was declining. The public debt, which stood at 32% of GDP in 2008, had reached 70.2% of GDP by 2014. And at that point, Ghana became classified as a country at high risk of debt distress. A country at high risk of debt distress. And we are still trying to get ourselves out of this classification. Interest rates were high, and the banking system was weak. With rising unemployment, Unemployed Graduates Association became the new enviable club in town. When you look at the data, ladies and gentlemen, the overall performance of the previous government, macroeconomic indicators, when you look at them, you will notice distinctly a different performance between 2009 and the 2011 period, and then the 2012 to the 2016 period. The 2012 to the 2016 period was much, much worse. even though the external environment was favorable. So what have we done in the past 2 years? Following the overwhelming mandate to change the trajectory and the fortunes of the economy, the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo set down his markers for change. The overarching objective is to build a modern, prosperous, and private sector-driven economy anchored on a vision of Ghana beyond aid. The overarching objective will be broken down into a number of sub-objectives, and I will address this particular town hall following these sub-objectives. The pursuit of stable macroeconomy, pursuing inclusive transformation to help the poor and the vulnerable in our society and ensure social equity, pursuing the formalization of the economy by leveraging technology for digitization, enhancing the ease of doing business to remove bottlenecks that impeded the private sector development, reforming and enhancing the competitiveness of our ports. And this is why I will talk about port reform and announce some measures that the cabinet has taken. And transforming the structure of the economy through diversification, technological innovation, and greater value addition in our production processes. All these are to be supported by building a sound banking system, strengthened infrastructural investment, and good governance, especially in fighting corruption. Let me share with you our progress on these fronts. On macroeconomic stability, a major flagship program of the government is the restoration of macroeconomic stability on a sustainable basis, an anchor for economic growth and enhanced private sector progress. The pillars. The ability of the economy to produce goods and services measured by real GDP growth is increasing. Growth for 2017 was 8.1%, one of the highest in the world in that year, significantly exceeding the average sub-Saharan African growth of 2.7%, as the figure 1 will show. You would see that from 2017, Ghana's growth, in 2018, Ghana's growth has exceeded the sub-Saharan African growth. GDP growth remained robust in 2018, almost double the average in sub-Saharan Africa. But what is also important is that non-oil growth, as you would see in the second figure, non-oil growth has increased from 4.6% to 5.8%. A strong growth performance has resulted in an increase in per capita income, which today is at 9,864 Ghana cedis, which is 30% higher than in 2016. Our challenge, ladies and gentlemen, is to make the distribution fair, especially to the benefit of the weak, disadvantaged, and vulnerable in society. This is the ultimate goal of our inclusive transformation. The recent growth performance has been driven mainly by industry and agriculture. The latter, agriculture, particularly reflecting the effect of policy interventions in the sector, most notably the planting of food and jobs. This has resulted in an increase in agricultural sector growth from 2.9% in 2016 to 6.8% by 2018. And this agri sector growth has been driven by crop production. The industrial sector performance has been underpinned by petrocarbon production initially, and increasing investment in manufacturing sector as we work to stabilize the macroeconomic environment and improve the ease of doing business. Then to fiscal and monetary policy. So on the growth side, we are seeing that growth has picked up and it is increasing. The growing confidence in the macroeconomy owes a lot to the prudent management of our finances and monetary affairs over the last 2 years. The prudent management by the Ministry of Finance and the prudent management by the Bank of Ghana. They've performed a complementary role in managing our monetary and financial environment. The efficiency in expenditure management has come from prioritizing and reallocation of spending to areas most needed. We had to prioritize. If you look at this graph, you would see that spending has come down as we reprioritize in this context, and that has resulted in the fiscal deficit on a cash basis reducing from 6.8% of rebased GDP in 2016 to an estimated 3.8% in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, to give you a sense of the prudence in fiscal management, for the first time in a decade, Ghana recorded primary balance surpluses. Primary balance is the tax revenue exceeding all government expenditure, excluding debt service payments, right? So that is your primary balance. But for the first time in a decade, the primary balance, we've attained primary balance surpluses for 2 years in a row. The primary balance was in surplus of 0.5% of GDP in 2017 and 1.4% in 2018, compared to a deficit of 0.1% of GDP in 2016. A positive primary balance is important because it means a slowing down of debt accumulation. To underpin fiscal discipline going forward so that we don't get into this election cycle increases in fiscal expenditure that create these deep fiscal holes. To underpin this going forward, Ghana has for the first time in our history passed a law, a Fiscal Responsibility Act, that limits the fiscal deficit in any year to a maximum of 5% of GDP and requires by law a positive primary balance. In addition, a fiscal council has been established to provide oversight and advice on the implementation of fiscal policy. These are new measures and new institutions that we have set up for the first time in our history. On the public debt, the total public debt has increased from 122 billion in 2016 to 173 billion, including the cost of the banking sector cleanup at the end of 2018. However, the strong fiscal adjustment and better debt management has meant that the rate of debt accumulation, which is at 12%, excluding the banking sector cleanup, the rate of debt accumulation is at its lowest in the last decade. And you will see the graph, I think, on the rate of debt accumulation. Although in absolute terms, interest payments have increased over the last 2 years with much better debt management, interest payments as a percentage of GDP have gone down from 6.9% in 2016 to 5.6% of GDP in 2018. And therefore, the debt burden of interest payments has declined. So yes, the additional borrowing has not added significantly to the debt service obligations as a percentage of GDP, and this is good debt management. Total public debt as a percentage of GDP slowed down 54% in 2018. And in fact, the 2017-2018 period is the first time our debt has come down as a percent of GDP since 2008. So it is significant. But the total debt as a percentage of GDP slowed down to 54.8%, and this created the room for the government to accommodate the painful but very necessary banking sector reforms, which cost government close to 3.2% of GDP. A combination of prudent monetary policy and fiscal consolidation over the last 24 months, supported by zero central bank financing of government and strong external sector developments, have underpinned a steady disinflation process over the last 24 months. Inflation has dropped steadily from the high of 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 9% at the end of January 2019. This is the lowest we have seen in the last 6 years. The steady disinflation process provided scope for significant monetary policy easing. The Bank of Ghana's monetary policy rate has been cut by a cumulative 950 basis points, or 9.5% to you and I, between 2017 and 2019. 9.5% reduction in the Bank of Ghana monetary policy rate. This has translated into also a reduction in short-term rates. Real rates have fallen from an average of 32% to 27% in 2018. So we're seeing inflation declining and have an impact on interest rates. Further to the banking sector. Further to the strengthening of the monetary and financial environment, the Bank of Ghana has recently undertaken reforms in the banking sector, aimed at strengthening the sector to support the growth agenda of government. The consolidation of banks from 34 to 23, with the liquidation of some 9 of them at the end of 2018, have resulted in a banking sector that is well capitalized, liquid, well positioned to improve the flow of funds in the economy and to drive private sector growth and development. This, however, has not been costly. Government had to spend a total of some 12 billion Ghana cedis for the banking sector cleanup in order to restore confidence and promote financial stability. We had a very precarious situation. Most people don't realize how close we were to the brink, but government had to step in and save the financial system and save the deposits for 1.5 million depositors. 1.5 million depositors. The cleanup has also resulted in a fresh capital injection in excess of 4 billion into the banking industry. How has this worked out? According to the Bank of Ghana, just their recent monetary policy release, and I quote, private sector credit growth has gained some momentum, stemming from the improved liquidity position of the banks on the back of the recapitalization increase. Annual private sector credit growth was 21.1% at February 2019, compared with 2.4% in the same period in 2018. In real terms, private sector credit growth expanded by 10.9%. So we are restoring credit growth in the banking sector, and this cleanup of the banking sector is going to yield positive results. Going forward, government and all financial regulators are committed to promoting a strong, resilient financial system. The establishment of the Financial Stability Council, which brings all the regulators together, is to ensure effective coordination among the financial regulators and to strengthen financial stability. Again, like with the Fiscal Council, the Financial Stability Council, and innovation. We've never had it in Ghana, and we are the only the second country in Africa to have a Financial Stability Council and also a Fiscal Council. Let's look at our external performance. Ghana's external payments position has strengthened for the first time in over 2 decades. 2 decades, that is 20 years. The trade balance, that is the difference between the export and what we import, recorded a surplus in 2017 and an even larger surplus in 2018. It is not because we are importing less, but largely because of increased exports of oil and exports of other traditional commodities, cocoa and gold. The positive trade balance resulted in a significant narrowing of the current account deficit as a percentage of GDP. Improvements in the current account performance and increased capital inflows have helped to boost the international reserves over the last 24 months. Gross international reserves reached $7.56 billion at the end of December 2017. Despite these improvements, the net foreign exchange reserve declined in 2018, first as forex sales by the Bank of Ghana, in its normal exchange rate management, and second is the portfolio outflows as foreign investors repatriated coupons, thus their investments here and principal investments over concerns about Ghana's exit from the IMF program. There were jitters in the market because Ghana was leaving the IMF program. Following the recent Eurobond issue, Ghana's gross international reserves as the end of March 2019 stands at $9.9 billion, equivalent to 5 months of import cover. I now turn my attention to the exchange rate. The exchange rate is simply the price of one currency relative to other currencies. For example, CD relative to the dollar. At the basic level, it is influenced by relative demand and supply for the foreign currency. Factors such as the inflation rate, the balance of trade, the fiscal balance, the money supply. These are what we refer to as the fundamentals. These factors influence the exchange rate. But speculation and expectations about these fundamentals, external shocks such as oil price increases, can also have powerful short-term effects on the exchange rate. When we see pressures on the exchange rate, first we need to determine where these pressures are coming from and whether the pressures are transitory or permanent. And as every astute central banker knows, even with strong economic fundamentals, speculation, expectations, and investor sentiment can exert pressures on the exchange rate. Ladies and gentlemen, you will recall that I stated in 2014 that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. That was true then. That was true then, and it is true now. It is 100% correct. So if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But it is warped logic to jump from that to a conclusion that if there is depreciation in your currency, then the fundamentals must be weak. Do you understand the logic? It is very warped logic. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But if the exchange rate moves, you cannot jump to that conclusion that the fundamentals are weak. That defies logic. That defies logic. There could be other external factors causing the exchange rate depreciation. For example, if I tell you that if your leg is broken, you are going to be unable to walk, and I'm somewhere and somebody comes to tell me, this person is unable to walk, can I just conclude that their leg is broken? There can be other reasons why you are unable to walk. But the NDC logic will insist in the face of contrary evidence that since you cannot walk, then it must mean your leg must be broken. In 2014, the exchange rate depreciated by 31.3%. The fiscal deficit was 10.1% of GDP. The public debt rose to 70.2% of GDP. Inflation rose to 17%. And GDP growth had declined from 7.3% to 4%. In other words, the economic fundamentals had weakened significantly, and therefore the depreciation was easily explainable. It was not caused by dwarfs or high-rise buildings, as we were told. The exchange rate in 2014 had exposed the weak economic fundamentals. And if you look at the table on the screen, it gives you the fundamentals as we have it in 2014, and you look at them in 2018. Every single one of them, real GDP growth, inflation, the fiscal balance, wage bill to GDP, gross debt, interest rates, and all of that, current account, all the fundamentals, you will see we were in a much weaker position in 2014 compared to 2018. So, ladies and gentlemen, how has the city performed recently? At the end of December 2017, the city had cumulatively depreciated by 4.9% compared to 9.6% in 2016. And this was the city's best performance since 2011. At the end of 2017, we had the best performance of the city since 2011. The city, however, depreciated by 8.4% in 2018, largely on account of the emerging market pressures and U.S. interest increases. The data, ladies and gentlemen, on the annual rate of depreciation of the city in recent years, and you will see the graph here, it's like night and day. The data on the annual rate of depreciation of the city in recent years shows that the worst performance so far under the MPP government, the 8.4% depreciation that we saw in 2018, that worst performance is better than the best performance under the previous government between 2012 and 2016. So our worst is better than our best. And then you say boot for boot. This one is more like boot for Chalewote. Ladies and gentlemen, the start of 2019 has been characterized by another sudden sharp depreciation of the city, which was largely been reversed. Within a week, the city went up close to 5.9 to the dollar, and then it retreated back to about 5.07. and even was threatening to go below 5. But this is really an unprecedented development, that you don't normally see such a retreat when the exchange rate depreciates. And this was also, and you see within in the next graph when we look at the city dollar exchange rate, that you will see that in this period when there was a reversal in the city depreciation, the Bank of Ghana had not intervened in the market. In fact, you look at it as at the end of March 2019, the cedi has depreciated by about 5.18% so far this year. But we have to understand, how come we saw this sort of movement in the exchange rate at the beginning of the year, a few weeks ago? What happened? Why did it jump so far? Many reasons have been given. Let me tell you what happened. The most important the proximate cause of the recent depreciation is the time inconsistency of an IMF prior action on the reserves target. At the end of January, as part of the said prior actions, to get to the IMF board and the completion of the IMF program, the IMF gave Ghana 7 actions to complete before March 15th. 7 prior actions that we had to meet. 7 conditions. One of the conditions that the Bank of Ghana had to meet was to increase its net international reserves to the level of December 2018. To increase the net international reserves meant that the Bank of Ghana could not sell any foreign exchange in the market. They had to essentially hold their hands to the back and could not intervene on the market during this particular period. So demand for foreign currency was not met by supply as normally happens on a day-to-day basis. And we know when the demand is greater than the supply or the supply is not coming, price will go up. And this is exactly what was happening. So to meet the Bank of Ghana, and the Bank of Ghana had to increase its reserves by about $800 million. And this explains, what was happening. So once the reserves target was met, we then had an IMF board meeting on March 20th, which passed Ghana. So this partly explains why the city came under such pressure. It was the primary reason. Contrary to some speculation, the Bank of Ghana did not spend any reserves to revive the city following the initial depreciation. Some people have misunderstood the requirement by the IMF for the Bank of Ghana to build up its reserves by some $800 million to mean that the bank used $800 million to reverse the depreciation. That will not be wise. The reason for the sudden reversal in the sharp depreciation that we observed was that the market corrected itself. Investor sentiments, expectations, and uncertainties acknowledged that the fundamentals are much stronger than expected. And even without the IMF, fiscal and monetary discipline are assured. The reversal of the depreciation that has taken place actually supports the fact that the fundamentals are indeed strong. We should recall, ladies and gentlemen, that the weak fundamentals in 2014 meant that the NDC government of the day had to end up seeking an IMF bailout. The difference today is stark and glaring. Because our fundamentals are strong, Ghana only yesterday formally exited from the IMF program. Indeed, the strength of Ghana's fundamentals was confirmed on March 6, 2019, March 16, 2019 by Standard & Poor's Global, which affirmed Ghana's sovereign rating as B with a stable outlook after upgrading Ghana's sovereign rating from B- to B with a stable outlook last year. This, in fact, was the first upgrade by Standard & Poor's for Ghana in 10 years. First upgrade in 10 years. Second, Ghana also successfully issued a $3 billion Eurobond at more favorable rates than previous issues. The amount offered by investors was over $20 billion. And this is a record in Africa. And it's a strong affirmation of the positive assessment of the fundamentals by the international financial markets. In fact, today, Ghana has Africa's longest bond. We have a 31-year bond on the Eurobond market. There's no other country. The closest is Morocco, which is 30 years, I think. So it's a vote of confidence. However, we don't live macroeconomic stability alone. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, macroeconomic stability is important. It is like fresh air. You can easily take it for granted until someone fouls the air. However, macroeconomic stability alone is not sufficient. It must translate into the well-being of Ghanaians in their everyday living. Safe drinking water, good roads, access to good health care, stable and affordable electricity, good education, amongst others. Here are some of the policies that the government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is implementing that go to the core of the aspirations of Ghanaians. The inclusive transformation agenda that we are pursuing. We are pursuing an inclusive transformation. We want to transform the economy, but we want to make sure everybody is included in that transformation. So the inclusive transformation agenda is to empower Ghanaians, regardless of the circumstances, and to reduce hardship. We are doing so on three fronts. First, we're building development capacity and expanding job creation opportunities. Second, we are enhancing access to public services. And third, we are empowering local communities and investing in local infrastructure. Where are we on these fronts? As far as human development capacity is concerned and the expanding of job creation opportunities, we introduced the free SHS as a major transformation initiative to developing the human capacity of the future. We've seen just last year a 36% increase in 2018 alone, meaning that an additional 181,000 students who would otherwise have been denied secondary education are now having a chance to build a future. We're reserving 30%. We have reserved 30% of the places in the elite schools for people from deprived areas. And this is a little step in addressing inequality. The GET Fund is going to spend $1.5 billion, and this financing has been arranged in the next 3 years for educational infrastructure, especially in school blocks and dormitories. We have doubled the capitation grant, more than doubled, from 4.5 cedis, Ghana cedis, to 10 Ghana cedis. We've expanded the school feeding program to cover an additional 500,000 children. We've established the Nation Builders Corps, provide employment to 100,000 graduates who were otherwise sitting at home. And the recruitment in the public service also gone up. If you look at recruitment, financial clearances for the security services, education, forestry, YEA, and NAPCO, over the last 2 years, these amount to just over 350,000 jobs. And this is just for these sectors, just for the sectors I've mentioned, not included planting for food and jobs. Because of the expansion of the economy, ladies and gentlemen, and better payroll management, the wages and salaries as a percentage of GDP, I'd like you to note this, because sometimes people think you're too expensive, but the wages and salaries as a percentage of GDP has declined from 7.2% to 5.8% in 2018. So the wages and salaries used to be at 7.2% of GDP in 2016, and we brought it down to 5.8%, whilst at the same time increasing jobs to people. This is good economic management. The private sector is also adding jobs. We've restored the teacher training allowances, restored the nation training allowances, and we have abolished fees for postgraduate medical training in Ghana. And I think this is also, in terms of enhancing access to the delivery of public services, in another 3 weeks' time or less, 3 weeks' time, we will see medical delivery by drones begin in Ghana of critical medicines and blood. The start will be from Suhum, then we'll spread it out to the rest of the country. We have increased the share of the District Assembly Common Fund to persons with disabilities from 2% to 3%. We have also ensured the implementation of our pledge of employing 50% of the persons who manage the country's toll booths from amongst persons with disabilities. The LEAP empowerment has added 150,000 beneficiaries. On pensions, in November 2017, government transferred 3.1 billion Ghana cedis of Tier 2 pension funds from custodial accounts to the pension schemes of the labor union funds, funds that had been outstanding since 2013. We are also empowering local communities. The Creative Arts Council in 2018 provided support to the Creative Arts Council, and we're building capacity building. We are also building we've also built the Eastern Regional Theatre. The work has been completed and work is ongoing on the theatre in Kumasi. We want to do a theatre in every region. And the National Entrepreneurship Innovation Program, 1,350 startups and small businesses have benefited from government business support, with beneficiaries receiving a range of 10,000 Ghana cedis to 100,000 Ghana cedis each at an interest rate of 10%. We have increased access to electricity and reduced tariffs of 17.5% for households and 30% for businesses. We've also established the Zongo Development Fund to finance infrastructure. Under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication and Development, many projects are taking place across all 275 constituencies, including warehouses, one village, one dam, water systems, toilets, rural markets, clinics, and also we have ordered the 275 ambulances under this program for the one constituency, one ambulance program. So much is happening. On the management of the economy, many may not appreciate how much work has been done by this government. But if you ask the question, how do you take an economy which is in a deep fiscal hole, with no meat on the bone, with a high deficit, a high debt and high interest rates, an economy which could not pay basic obligations such as teacher and nursing training allowances, with a weak banking system that was on the verge of collapse, and at the same time you reduce 17 taxes, implement free SHS, restore teacher training allowances and nursing training allowances, introduce NAPO, introduce many other social interventions, and at the same time you reduce the budget deficit and increase economic growth. How do you do this? How do you do this? It takes competent economic management. That's how you do it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at how we have tried to leverage technology for formalization of the economy. In this area, so much is going on, some people don't even know. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ghanaian society is largely informal. In such an environment, access to services, targeting in delivery of public services to those who need these services most, the deprived, become difficult. And in most cases, it depends on who you know. For the banking sector, lending rates are high, partly because of the high information problems in establishing identity and in verifying ownership of property. These have to change if we are aspiring to become a middle-income country. It is for all these reasons that we are aggressively pursuing the agenda to formalize the economy through digitization. For the public sector, leveraging on technology and digitization of systems improve administrative systems and the way we govern ourselves. In a well-functioning society, citizens don't need to know somebody or bribe somebody to get a passport, driver's license, access to water or electricity. We cannot build a fair and equitable society that runs on engines of bribes, guru boys, and land guards. With digitization, we are introducing new and more efficient ways of doing things. We are changing the way things are done in affected institutions for the benefits of ordinary Ghanaians. Here are a few of the reforms we have undertaken and we are undertaking in the digitization space. We have the introduction of the national ID card is a game changer, despite its teething challenges. So far, about 500,000 cards have been issued, and we've had the pilots take place in Adenta and Medina. We expect the mass issuance to commence at the end of April. On the digital property addressing, the process of tagging all 4 million homes with digital addresses is ongoing, supported by the Ministry for Special Initiatives and the Ministry for Local Government. We've digitized driver's license and vehicle registration. We've introduced mobile payments interoperability. This has been implemented. It's a major step to financial inclusion. And because of mobile payments interoperability, today, if you have a mobile phone and mobile money, you can pay money into a bank account and also receive money from a bank account. So you don't really need to have a bank account, and that's why all the holders of mobile money can have access to some banking services. And it is a major stride that we have made in this country. In fact, Ghana is the only country in Africa where you have that type of interoperability between mobile money and bank accounts. It's the only country in Africa. The digitization of the land registry is going on. We are really moving to digitize the land registry so that you don't get to the land registry and someone will tell you your document is missing. So there is a major program that has been started for us to digitize the land registry in Ghana, and it is succeeding well. Passport applications are now online, and the passport duration has been increased from 5 to 10 years. Renewal of NHIS registration via mobile phone has seen a phenomenal innovation with an average of 70,000 renewals every week. NHIS, and before our people had to go and line up outside offices and wait, sometimes for days in the rural areas, to get NHIS renewal. But today, all you need to do is take your mobile phone, dial *929#, use your mobile money to pay, and bingo, you have been renewed. To enhance access to telephone and digital services in rural areas, government has deployed 200 rural telephony sites for broadband access, serving 500 communities in the last years. 200 in the last 2 years. In the previous government, they did only 78 in 8 years of the rural telephony sites. 78 in 8 years. Finally, the management of the State Transport Corporation has introduced online ticketing for State Transport Corporation buses, where you can book and pay for your ticket using your mobile phone. This is currently being transported, so we will no longer need to go to transport yard to line up, buy a ticket, use at home, pay for it, select your seat, and off you go. We have also launched an emergency 112 number for the police, fire, and ambulance services, and work is ongoing to integrate this emergency 112 number with the National Digital Address System, so that the emergency services will immediately know when you call exactly where you are calling from. So this is a major thing. You can try the 112. A lot of people don't even know that the emergency number works. But if you need police, ambulance, or fire service, just dial 112 from wherever you are. We are working on the integration. But once the integration is complete, immediately the emergency services receive the call, they will know exactly where it's coming from, because they will know the digital address of the property where you are calling from. The digitization of the police information systems has also resulted in a deployment of 1,000 cameras across the country, with central monitoring center in Accra, as well as digital call centers in Kumasi and Tamale. to monitor all the 16 regions. The next phase, which is being championed by the police and national security, will see 8,000 cameras deployed throughout the country to fight crime. We've also been working very hard the ease of doing business. And here again, we're trying to help companies, businesses, as part of the digitization agenda. For example, now, to register a business, we've changed the way it is done. To register a business, instead of filling 4 separate forms to start a business, only one form is now required. The Registrar General has merged all 4 forms that is starting a business, that is the TIN application, the SNIT application, the business operating permit, and also the business registration form. They've been merged into one, and it's automated. So everybody will get theirs, and you will get your business operating permit issued, as well as the certificate for registration as well. So it's a major relief to people who go trying to go to different parts just to register a business. We've also automated the process of obtaining a construction permit. So I know contractors will be happy now with this. But even more remarkable is the implementation, thanks to the work of the Chief Justice, of an electronic justice system that allows automated serving of court processes with speed and ease. When fully operational, court documents will be easy to find and track, and there will be no duplication of the same case to be heard in different courtrooms and by different judges. This is a major innovation, and I doff my hat to the Chief Justice. We've also looked at the process of obtaining electricity to your house. There were about 7 different steps. We've reduced it to 3, and by the end of the year, they are promising us that the process of obtaining electricity in your house will go completely paperless. So we'll try to hold them to that. We've introduced a paperless port system that has reduced the time to clear goods at the ports to less than 48 hours. And this is all very good. As I mentioned also, we've abolished 17 nuisance taxes. So you are seeing the ease of doing business. We are enhancing the ease of doing business with all of these reforms. Another area is the structure of the economy. We are changing the structure of the economy through value addition. And this is key to going beyond aid. We know about the Planting for Food and Jobs and what it has done. We've established the Ghana Commodity Exchange, which is an ultra-modern trading system linked to warehouses located across this country to connect markets. We know about the One District, One Factory policy, which we are implementing, the stimulus package to existing businesses. We've also started the integrated bauxite and aluminum industry. This is an exciting industry, a new industry, one that Ghana has wanted to do since the days of Nkrumah, but we have not had the opportunity to do it. Thankfully, we are in the process of doing so now, and I believe, and the data shows, that the integrated bauxite industry will be more valuable to Ghana than the oil industry. And we're doing, because of all the linkages downstream. We're also looking at and so we are on course with that. We are also looking at the automotive industry. You see an automotive policy has come out, and many companies are going to be setting up in Ghana. What we have done bauxite, we are doing exactly the same for the iron and steel industry. A bill is currently in Parliament, and we think it will be passed before they rise, so that with the iron and steel industry and the bauxite industry will rise together in this country to change the game. So it is really key what we are doing. The energy sector is, however, key to industrialization. We inherited many challenges in the sector, but these challenges are being addressed. Ghana has excess capacity in energy generation, but the contracts entered into for many of these IPPs are expensive and fundamentally and financially burdensome. Many of these contracts are take or pay arrangements. This means that even if we don't get the power, we still have to pay for it. Ghana is currently paying $24 million a month in excess capacity charges alone for the power we have not used. This will increase to about $41 million a month later this year with the coming on stream of Send Power, Early Power, and Amandi power plants. Even though we don't have problems with power generation capacity, we have problems with transmission. And the GridCo network is old, and it has been thus far unable to invest in high-capacity lines. The takeover of ECG by PDS should help bring in much-needed investments. The Millennium Charter Corporation Compact is expected to result in $1 billion invested in the power sector over the next 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has enough gas to power all our plants without relying on imported gas. Gas is so much cheaper than liquid fuel. This is why a policy decision has been taken to switch largely to the use of gas in energy generation. However, most of our gas is in the west of Ghana, and most of our power plants are in the east. And so we have to overcome the transportation bottlenecks. But if we do this switch, which should be done this year, the estimates are that we will save about $300 million annually, just on that switch. The West African gas pipeline supplies gas from the east to the west, and this is why we are doing a reverse flow to move gas from the west to the east. The first phase of the reverse flow will be completed this month, which will allow us to transport some 60 million scarves from the west to the east, and the final, the completion of this work should be done between July and August. That's phase 2 of it, after which, fingers crossed and God willing, we should not import any gas anymore. We'll use all domestic gas. So by July, August, we will be using domestic gas, if all this thing, and which will really bring down cost of gas in this country. And of course, Car Power is also moving to the west to be the off-taker for this gas. You know, we have also, the Ministry of Finance has also been directed. One of the major problems in this, at the heart of the energy sector, is short collections by EC. We are not collecting enough, or not PDS. And this, when the ECG doesn't collect enough, they don't pay the others in the value chain, GridCo and so on. And this provides, and the other IPPs. So, unfortunately, government has been the major culprit in not paying bills. And so Cabinet has directed the Ministry of Finance should henceforth pay the bill not through the MDAs, but pay directly to the utility, so that there will be no middle person in there. We are going to see more prepaid meters in operation. Ladies and gentlemen, I will move on to port reforms. Our ports remain important national assets, and we must manage it to improve trade to the benefit of all Ghanaians. Government has devoted considerable energy over the last 2 years with different stakeholders, shippers, importers, exporters, freight forwarders, traders, spare part dealers, listening to their concerns. What was baffling to us was that even though the MPP government had not increased import duties, there were persistent complaints that duties at the ports were high. So government set up a port review committee to review the competitiveness of Ghana's ports within the West African region. Here are some of the surprising findings. Here are some of the surprising findings. Except for Nigeria, the total marine charges and security fees charged at Tema for container handling far exceed those of our key competitors. In fact, there are 3 times the charges in Lomé and nearly twice the charges in Abidjan. No port in West Africa is charging the equivalent of the Ghana Maritime Security Fee of nearly $20,000 per vessel in our ports. Import handling charges are higher in Tema than in any port in West Africa. While nearly 90% of containers that come to Tema are physically examined, physically open them, and staff them, examine, and restaff them. 90% are physically examined. Only about 5% are subject to physical examination in any modern port. Physical examination is a major source of corruption at the ports. Data, however, because we wanted to find out all this physical examination, how much does it add to revenue? When we asked that question, it was Asemaba. Because how much? 90%. So how much did it add to revenue? The result that it added 0.38%. 0.3, not even 0.5. So it's less 0.4%. All the wahala that you put importers through with all this examination, 0.38% additional revenue. So time, the unofficial facilitation fees, and the energy spent in collecting this amount totally negates any gains this may have brought to the government. Many port charges are a percentage of the value of the goods, and this makes them exorbitant and hardly justifiable. Why should the cost of scanning a container, a vehicle examination fee, a network charge be a percentage of the value of the goods in the container? Why should the cost of processing the documentation covering imports be a percentage of the cost of the value of the goods? In most modern ports, these fees are flat charges. It's the same. Whether it's the good, you take a picture, is $1, $2, or $10. It's the same. So it is like a photographer wanting to take a picture of you. You are two people. One is wearing a Rolex watch, and they'll charge you a fee for your picture. The other who doesn't have a watch, way lower. It doesn't make sense. The benchmark values we found also applied by customs to various commodities in the computation of import duties in Tema are much higher than in Lomé, Abidjan, and Dar. In many cases, they are 100 to 200% higher. If you take, for example, a Ford Focus 009 model, and you go to Tema, our benchmark will say it is worth $9,000. You go to Lomé, the same car, they'll benchmark it at $3,000. And the same car in Dakar at also exactly as in Lomé, exactly the same price of $3,000. So it's a problem. You then end up paying double the duty because the benchmarks are so high in Accra vis-a-vis Tema, vis-a-vis Lomé and Abidjan. And we have a very archaic practice. When many importers are unable to pay their duties, their cars and commodities are confiscated and auctioned off very cheaply, often less than the duty owed. So, ladies and gentlemen, for importers, the choice is clear. There's an increasing, the data shows that there is an increasing diversion of trade away from Tema port, and the smuggling of many items into Ghana is very tempting. Let me give you this data. Just think about this. Container volumes in Lomé port between 2013 and 2018 have gone up by 300%. Lomé, container volumes between 2013 and 2018 has increased by 300%. That's 60% annually on average. Annually, Ghana, between 2013 and 2016, container volumes have increased by 4.1%. So you are looking at 4.1% against 300%. So there's so much of these container volumes, and when you go to the Lomé port, you see a long line of trucks coming into Ghana. So you are seeing exactly what is happening. So because of this, Cabinet, after considering all of of this, has decided to implement some new reforms at the port. Cabinet is making these reforms, these decisions, with the objective of increasing trade facilitation and efficiency and revenue. Port revenue depends on volume. Port revenue depends on volume. So if you don't have the trade facilitation, you will not have the volume. And if you don't have the volume, you will not have the revenue. And this is that is what the thing that is informing these decisions. So we are looking at increasing revenue. But to do so, we cannot be uncompetitive between Ghana and our next door neighbors. That is just shooting ourselves in the foot. So, to reduce the incidence of smuggling and enhance revenue, the benchmark delivery values of imports will be reduced by 50%. This, however, for vehicles, the reduction will be 30%. This is because vehicles already attract an amount of depreciation, which if you factor it in, it will take you closer to the 50%. This will be effective from tomorrow. It looks like there's a lot of support for this policy. We are doing this because we expect that you will see higher volumes into Ghana and we will make higher revenue. Also, ladies and gentlemen, the physical examination of containers in the port is to reduce, the benchmark we've given customs is to reduce the physical examination of containers at the port from 90% currently to 10% by June. Customs and other government operatives at the ports should adhere to the recommendations of the risk engine under the paperless regime. The risk engine determines whether it's green, red, yellow, or red. We should adhere, modern ports adhere to the risk engine. But sometimes when they say it's green, they say we still have to inspect. So we want to move away from that. Customs is being directed to do that, and they've started the process actually. The risk engine allows for the incorporation of specific intelligence on containers. And where containers are selected by the risk engine for examination, there will be a joint examination which must include national security. So the joint examination should always include national security. You should never have a situation where there are separate examinations of containers by national security at the gate, right? So you should all be there. Once the container is leaving the gate, it's just to make sure they've done all of it and let them leave the gate. So we don't expect that. Government, to plug the leak, will also begin, if all goes well, with the implementation of the first port rule in June 2019, so that we are seeing a lot of increase in transit traffic, and we think this is part of the smuggling. And we're going to implement a first port rule, which means that if you say, I'm going to Burkina, you go to the Burkina desk and pay your duty before you leave the port. So if you are going to Niger, you go to the Niger desk, pay your duty and go. So no duty, no exit. That's the first port rule. And we want, going forward, to have a flat-free structure for the port and customs changes for any new single window operation, no longer a structure depending on the percentage of the value of the good. Subject to parliamentary approval, we are going to review a number of charges. So we will be doing a review of a number of charges: the maritime security charge, the export and import charge by the Shippers Authority, the importer registration fees, the Easy Pass levy, and also the Eco levy, which is a $7 per new tire charge, and so on. Cabinet has directed that we should review them. Some of them are not necessary, and send recommendations to Parliament, and Parliament will make the necessary changes. To deal with the lack of information, ladies and gentlemen, since we are in a digitized age, there's usually a lack of, when you've brought in a container, you don't really know the status of the container in the clearance process. A mobile application has been developed that will enable importers check the status of their consignment and also the import duty payable online. So this application is available online at the Google Play Store now, and will also be available on iTunes if it is already not available. It is called Ghana Trade Hub. Ghana Trade Hub. Everybody should download it, because immediately as long as you have import declaration form number, and you go to the Ghana Trade Hub and input your import declaration form number, it will tell you exactly how much duty you have to pay and where your container is. And you can start using it from today. You can start using it today. These reforms are expected to increase revenues as container volumes through the port increase. However, in the short term, necessary fiscal adjustments will be made to accommodate temporary revenue shortfall to maintain fiscal discipline. Ladies and gentlemen, what I've talked about so far is just 2 years of hard work. The achievements of our government have been remarkable. We are trying to do things in this country that we have not done since independence. This is what we are doing. We are changing the country, and we have a clear plan that we are following. And all the pieces are going to be fitting together. Looking to the future, one can say that Ghana's future under the leadership of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is bright, and the prospects of growth are promising. We have 2 years into planting of food and jobs. We looked at the district, one factory, and automobile industry, digitization. But more importantly, when you look also to the future, Ghana's recent oil discoveries would significantly boost production starting in 2021. And we envisage to double Ghana's oil production to about 400,000 barrels a day. And the Akka discovery will raise economic growth over 10% of GDP, and there's more coming because Exxon and all the other big players are coming, and it will help support as we move this economy away from the Gagisbe economy, and we are really very optimistic about that. So many infrastructure projects are coming. So much is coming. The Sino-Hydro project is starting next week with the cutting of the sword in Tamale. Next week, we start the $2 billion infrastructure development. So the president will cut the sword for the first interchange in the 3 northern regions, which will be the Tamale interchange next week. $1.5 billion of this money is going to roads. 1.5 billion. And the roads would be across all 16 regions of Ghana. Across. You will not have a situation where, like during the period of the NDC, where the whole of the Upper West region, not one major road was constructed in 8 years. The whole of the Upper West region, not one major road was constructed in 8 years. Not one major road. So we are going to make sure we distribute across all these. We have 12 landing sites with the CDB loan. It's being signed, I think, today, and we should expect it to. The Pualugu multipurpose dam is on the way. Bui hybrid is project irrigation is also coming. Between Pualugu and Bui, we would have almost increased the amount of irrigable land that government has put in place from 12,980 to 60,000 hectares for irrigation between these two. There's work on the railways, as you all know, in place. Affordable housing is coming with the UN OPS. We are putting in place 100,000 affordable housing scheme that the Ministry of Works and Housing has been working with the United Nations Office of Project Services. We should cut the sword this year, and it will be a game changer in the housing market. You know, so in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, let me reiterate that when it comes to GDP growth, we have performed better than we inherited. Agricultural growth, we have performed better. Industrial growth, we have performed better. Inflation, we have performed better. Interest rates, we have performed better. Exchange rate depreciation, we have performed better. The fiscal balance, the fiscal deficit, we have performed better. The trade balance, we have performed better. Current account balance, we have performed better. Gross international reserves, we have performed better. Jobs, we have performed better. Teacher training allowances, nursing training allowances, passport application, driver's license, renewal of NHIS, registering a business, cost of electricity, taxes, efficiency of clearing goods at the ports, the right to information bill, the Zongo Development Fund, national ID cards, mobile payment interoperability, digital address system, one district, one factory, one village, one dam, one constituency, one ambulance, free SHS, In short, ladies and gentlemen, we are managing the economy better and fulfilling our promises. But I mentioned earlier, we still have a lot more to do. We still have a lot more to do. But this has just been 2 years. And I will say, we have made a solid start. Support us. Support the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, for us to deliver more. Thank you very much for your attention. God bless you.
are managing the economy better and fulfilling our promises. Ladies and gentlemen, we turn to the Vice President of the Republic. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Would like to acknowledge the president of all the civil society organizations that were invited, all the special interest groups that are here with us. I see our friends from the Ghana Union Trader Associations. I see our friends from the Abuso spare parts dealers. I see our friends from the Makola Women Association. I see all of you and we recognize your presence. We also recognize the presence of all multilateral organizations. You are all duly recognized. Ladies and gentlemen, let me announce that there is a stand in the foyer. There is water and light refreshment. We are not allowed to bring in water and light refreshment into the auditorium. So if you feel like having a bottle of water, please quietly, you can rise and the ushers will escort you to provide you with water. At this juncture, like has been explained, the idea is to encourage an interaction between the governed and the government. His Excellency the President believes that we need to bring government closer to the doorstep of the people of Ghana and that we should engage with the people. We do acknowledge our friends from the media. You are here, but this is not the usual media encounter the way we know it. They are the stakeholders and they're the special interest groups. They are ordinary Ghanaians who are here to engage with the economic management team. We will encourage that we give preference to our brothers and sisters, the ordinary people who are here to also contribute to the exercise of leadership, exercise of governance, and that at the right time, we shall continue to engage with you, our brothers and sisters, in the media. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite the Honorable Minister for Information, my boss, Kojo Opon Nkrumah, to take over the motion, the questions and answers.
Thank you, Honorable Pass. We would like to, this juncture, can I get a microphone, please? Can I get a microphone? Gideon, if you can help me with a microphone. And we would like to, as randomly as possible, if you have a question for the economic management team led by His Excellency the Vice President, it's a good time to raise your hand wherever you are. We'll take a first set of about 6 questions, and then we will proceed to get responses, and then we will take some more. Prof, I see your hand up. I see a second hand up in smoke. 1, 2. Let me take about from here. So I'll take the first 2 from here. I'll take another 2 here and take another 2. First up, you please introduce yourself for the benefit of those who don't know you and your constituency, and then please let's hear your question.
My name is Peter Forte with ISA, University of Ghana. Your Excellency, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. I recall last year when I met you, I asked, when are we going to witness the new public lecture? And I won't say your response, I won't repeat your response here. But I'm excited that's happening today. My question is very simple. How does all this decent macro figures translate to jobs? How many jobs have we created in the past year or 2? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. There was a gentleman in that gentleman in the white smoke, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Kofi Lucas. I represent network of associations of registered NGOs in Ghana. This is a good presentation, Your Excellency. My question is it possible to decentralize the economic management team to the regions and to at least the district? And we should be able to name it Strategic Thinkers Forum. Is it possible?
Thank you for your question. There are about two more I want to take from here. There's a gentleman in an African print shirt here. One more. No, you are too close. I prefer a lady. I prefer a lady. We haven't heard from the ladies. I prefer a lady. There's a lady here, so I'll give her the second question, and then I'll come to this third quadrant. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Eric Otiabe, Department of Economics, KNUST. Having listened to the performance of the economy, I want to know what the government is doing to ensure we do not find ourselves back to the IMF extended credit facility issue. There are always doubts about government fiscal prudence in election year. That's the question. What happened in the past two elections show a lot of fiscal indiscipline. What would this government be doing to ensure the fiscal slippage won't happen again in 2020 at the back of this performance? Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lady who is already standing. So
all right, thank you very much. My name is Eton Amse. I represent the Media General Group. I have two questions. The first one, data from the recent held MPC showed that despite a year-on-year growth in revenue as at January 2019, the outturn was slightly below targets for the month. Admittedly, January is too early to conclusions about the revenue outlook, but it also showed a continuation of persistent revenue shortfalls. Question is, what has been the impact of the revenue measures implemented last year, and are we too bullish about our revenue projections, which is why we are consistently recording shortfalls? My very last question. Following last year's banking sector cleanup, government had to hear a fiscal cost of at least, and from Dr. Baumia's presentation, 12 billion cedis to close the assets and liability gap. With the anticipated cleanup in the microfinance and specialized deposit-taking institution sector, what is government's estimated fiscal cost, and how soon should we expect the green light for the Bank of Ghana to commence the cleanup? Thank you.
Thank you. May I kindly encourage all of us to keep the questions simple, one each, so that we can take as many as possible. So one gentleman, there's a gentleman there, and I would want to find out if our mothers from the market will also have a question. It can be in any language whatsoever, no problem. We'll be happy to take it. Yes, sir. Please tell us your name and your constituency.
My name is Kwakwen Chibodu. I do marketing for Delhi. Your Excellency, let me give you this scenario. My brother and I are giving an X amount to start business. I open a container, and then he goes for a half plot and builds chamber hall about 5. The first visitor I get is from the AMA. They have to ask for container fee. And then my next visitor is from GRE, coming to ask for income tax. The irony is that the tax they take for me, government will use to employ a rent officer to settle cases, to adjudicate cases between my brother tenants and himself. Meanwhile, he doesn't pay anything. So is the government considering tax on rent? My second thing is, I have my
I'm going to have to stop you there.
No, I have my receipts here. But the police, the interior minister here, you should listen. Please, please.
Very quickly.
The interior minister is here. The Tesano police, when we talk about vigilantism, the thing is about political vigilantism. The Tesano police in Accra here are playing vigilantism. AMA says what they are doing is illegal. Okay. But meanwhile, the issue...
Okay. Chief, thank you. I'll take one other question, preferably a female. Preferably a female. Is there a female hand up here? Please help me. If there's a female hand up here, let's take it. We'll keep it as simple as possible so that we can take as many questions as possible. Yes, madam.
Thank you. My name is Adubiesi Amabuaje, Japan Motors. I have two questions.
You are from Japan Motors?
Japan Motors.
You deal in cars and parts?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I have two basic questions. One on the ports. I'm very excited with the reforms on the ports. But my question has to do with the suspense regime and especially with the warehousing. I realize that most of the time when these reforms are done, geared towards the home consumption where you're paying taxes directly from the port. But then the warehousing regime is left out. I'd like to entreat the economic management team to consider that as well, because there are so many changes, especially when it comes to bond. There are manual processes. We find ourselves in an automated era where those processes could also be automated. My second question comes to the automobile industry, where we're having quite a number of brands proposing to come in for assembly. I want an assurance from government that it's capital-intensive venture, and there should be an assurance to investors that when they put their money there, there isn't going to be government policy, political interference that's going to draw the carpet under them, the investment to go down the drain. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to defer to the chairman of the EMT. The EMT is in session. So I'll defer to the chairman of the EMT to decide who he called upon to respond to some of these questions. I just want to quickly go over them. We'll go for another round of 2 questions from each side. Professor Korte is asking, how does this translate into jobs? From the CSOs, Lucas is asking whether EMT can be decentralized. There's a KNUST lecturer who's asking, what do we do to say ever again? Media General, there's a lady who is asking impact of the 2018 revenue measures, and then financial sector cleanup follow-up issues. Can there be tax on rent? Japan Motors wants the suspense regime and warehousing considered, and is asking for assurances that investors in the automobile sector will not be disadvantaged. Your Excellency.
Well, I think that the Minister for Trade and Industry could handle the jobs matter. How all we are doing, how does it translate into jobs? I think the Minister for Finance could take the whole issue of how we are ensuring irreversibility, how revenues are below target, whether we are too bullish, and also the banking sector reform. He has a lot on his plate. Yeah, so we can start with those.
Thank you, Excellency. I think the issue of jobs is fundamental to what we've been listening to this morning. Now, the experience from almost all the matured economies in the world point to one thing, that if you want to create jobs on a sustainable basis, you have to be able to industrialize. And that is why we've embarked on a very aggressive program for industrial transformation, probably never ever seen in this country since independence. You're talking about working with the private sector to ensure that at least in every district in Ghana, that will support the private sector to establish one major industrial processing facility. Beyond that also, we are working with the private sector. Please, the emphasis is not on government starting state enterprises. This is on supporting the private sector to do these things. So apart from the 1D1F, I'm sure you are also aware that in every region, government is supporting, again, private sector to create these industrial enclaves which provide the ecosystem for industries, both local and external, to locate. This can happen by chance. You have to create a system that will attract investments into the productive sectors of the economy. That's how you create jobs. Even in the United States of America, they are talking about industrialization, manufacturing, because they need to be able to create jobs. And I could go on and on. We have a very ambitious program for export development, not focusing on only cocoa and gold, but expanding non-traditional exports. That is also going to be an entry point for job creation. But I think, and of course, my brother from the Ministry of Agriculture, planting for jobs, it's also another entry point for job creation. But Excellency, if I may just spend a minute to put the whole essence of what we've been listening today, this morning, and how it relates to job creation. Now, when you inherit an economy that has significant challenges, your primary task is to stabilize the economy. That is the fundamental objective that you have to pursue. And for you to stabilize the economy, you need to be able to restrain expenditure and then ensure that you don't spend what you do not have. And as soon as you pursue such a policy, obviously because you are not embarking on public expenditure, there will be a constriction of jobs. But we have no choice but to do that in order to create the foundation and the environment for the jobs to be created, for investments to come, for the jobs to be created. So I think that what we've done, and I need to explain this, that we started, of course, we could have started talking about only job creation. But as the Americans will say, it ain't going to happen unless you have a stable macroeconomic environment. Nobody is going to invest in your country, whether domestic or external. So that is why you've seen that there's been a focus on the stabilization of the macroeconomy. You've also realized from this presentation that as we focused on macro stabilization, we also want to ensure that certain social services that are fundamental to reduce the burden on the ordinary Ghanaian also being addressed. Free education, national health insurance, all those are public sector investments. So meanwhile, whilst you are doing this, you are taking money away from maybe supporting the private sector, which ordinarily would have increased the level of job creation faster. But as the Vice President said, if you want sustained development in any country, you have no choice but to create a condition that will generate the jobs over a very long period of time. So now that you have 2 years of sustained macroeconomic improvement, because without that improvement, you can exit from the IMF. You cannot just go and say, I want to leave, and then they allow you to leave, because you have certain commitments. Now that we've been able to get that clean bill of health, and now that we've been able to address some of the social interventions, this is the time when you are going to see private sector boom, because the foundation has already been created. So if today we are announcing all these measures that would facilitate trade, that would expand investments, then you can understand that it needed to come at this time when we know that the environment has been created. So I thought that I should maybe I can just add on auto policy.
Yes, please.
Again, when you talk about industrial development, there's been so much focus on one district factory, but that is only a small part of what we are doing. We apart from the 1D1F and the industrial parks, I'm sure you've heard about Ghana identifying a number of new strategic growth pillars for Ghana. For over 50 to 70, 80 years, we've been depending on only cocoa and gold. For how long can you as a country depend only two commodities to fuel your transformation? That's not sustainable. And that's why we've identified new strategic sectors of growth. When the Vice President talks about the integrated bauxite and aluminum industry, that is a major entry point for job creation, upstream, downstream. Iron and steel, another major entry point for job creation. If you have steel and you have, aluminum, and you have plastics, which is what comes out of your petrochemical industry, then that's the basis for a very vibrant, I would say, construction environment. But we are going beyond these traditional sectors, and we talked about the auto sector. Without even putting any public investments into this auto sector, just the policy signaling. This is the first time in, I would say, in Africa, where a government has been able to identify a new sector of growth, and you see such significant response from the major investors in this sector. And so when you hear about Nissan, you hear about VW, Volkswagen, you hear about Renault, you hear about Suzuki, and you hear about Toyota, all at the same time seeking to invest in these sectors, then, Master, you can be assured that these major players will not respond just to a policy signal if they didn't have confidence in the policy that the government was introducing. So I think that, as the lawyers who say, the matter speaks for itself. Thank you, Excellency.
Minister for Finance. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. And thank you very much for the question. I think the professor from KNUST, I think asked a very important and niggling question that Ghanaians have and investors have. Are we going to have sort of policy reversals which would lead to a return to the IF? The President has declared that this is the 16th one, and never again are we going to do that. And never again are we going to do that. And I think, what transpired last week when we went to the bond market was an indication of the confidence in the economic management team and the resoluteness of where Ghana is going. But beyond that, knowing that it's a democracy and therefore you might or may not be in government, we went ahead to legislate this. This is where the Vice President was indicating that we have the Fiscal Responsibility Rule, Fiscal Advisory Council, the Financial Stability Council, so that we begin to anchor ourselves. And in that was the limitations of 5% for the deficit and a positive primary balance to ensure that the rate of accumulation of debt is reduced. It also means that we will not come into government in 2017 and inherit a deficit of 9.3. So whatever we do, you then operate within a band of reasonableness, irrespective of the government that is in play. I think that's very important and crucial. In addition to that is also the establishment of the Economic Planning Coordinating Committee at the Ministry of Finance, to be chaired by both the Governor and the Minister of Finance. And in that will be to ensure that we follow through with policies that we intend to keep and constantly give confidence to the market as to where we are going. I can assure you that never again would we go back. On the issue of 2020, I saw a cartoon showing the Vice President going to India to kind of hold down the city. We don't have to do that. We actually have the senior minister who was one of the first ministers to ensure that in election year he actually did not go into a deficit. So with his presence, wisdom and encouragement, we won't do that. But even before, as the Vice President mentioned, we are pushing ahead of an aggressive infrastructure plan. The Sino-High transaction that he brought to the country, which means that we don't have the pressures in 2020 to do anything untoward. And that's how we are looking to manage this. On the question of the outturn for our revenues, Preston, we do encourage ourselves to overperform. But even if you look at what we inherited at, I think maybe it was 31 billion odd for revenue in 2016, and we are now at a 60 billion total target. So even this period in which we beat ourselves down, we are almost about 90% of where we are, whilst revenues actually have moved from about 52, whilst expenditure have moved from about 52 to 70, which means a 40% increase. So you can see, what we are trying to do with managing the economy. But clearly, there's a lot more to be done with revenue. Because on the other hand, if you look at where we are at about 12% of GDP, which is way below our peer countries, which should be anywhere from 15 to 18. So that in there, is another maybe odd 20 billion that we can get. Not necessarily GRA, but maybe with taxing rent and all of us in the informal market, paying. I think April 15th is tax day. I wonder how many of you have filed your personal taxes. and that all goes to the issue of the citizens' responsibility and the Republic and what we must each do and to participate in this transformation agenda. With regards to the banking issue, yes, we do intend to tackle the microfinance one. I think the estimate is on 953 odd million CDs that we actually have put in an escrow account to be able to tackle that. And then there's the SDIs, which is the savings and loans institutions, etc. And approximate about 3 billion that it will cost us. So with the plan to get through that. Mr. Vice President, thank you.
Senior Minister, Minister for Plan, go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, I think what the Finance Minister didn't tell the people about this fiscal responsibility rule, that if he violates it, or any of us attempts to violate 5% rule, he will be sanctioned by Parliament. So it means that if you are going beyond 5%, you have to face the law in the House. And that can mean maybe not jail, but at least, just close to something terrible. So it is actually, there is a sanction regime to prevent the finance minister or even any other minister who will push him to go beyond the 5% to really be brought to the House for sanctioning. And we think that one will actually settle the 2020, there will be no excess of the deficit over the 5% that has been fixed. Thank you.
Senior Minister, the question was whether we should decentralize the EMT.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President and Chairman of the EMT. There is always one chief examiner per subject. The reason is that you want to ensure consistency. Now, if you decentralize the EMT in terms of persons, we are going to get a problem. What would be the equivalent of the Minister of Finance if you decentralize in the northern region or you decentralize the Volta region? What is important is that if you listen to Samuako very carefully, said we invite agencies, we invite line ministers, we invite the press sector to listen to their problems and assist them resolve it in respect of promoting the economy. So we members of the EA should be ready to move to the regions and sit and let people appear before us and listen to local problems so that we can, using the same power, find answers to the problems in a decentralized manner. We have been sitting so far only in Accra, and I think it's a warning that we should decentralize our sitting so that we come close to the problems and resolve them. So I think I urge with respect to the Vice that we must be ready to move. It's a very important suggestion because some problems are local and you never get close to them if you are always in Accra. So yes, we centralize the sitting but not the membership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senior Minister. That's why he has more gray hair than us. Yes, I think there was a question on the suspense regime for warehousing. It's from Japan Motors. It's something that we are looking at. I think we are examining that as well as part of all the reforms, so they wouldn't be left behind. So we can take the next of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while we do that, let me kindly ask the controllers to activate all the microphones so that we don't have to have our members come up. I'm going to take two, and then we'll go for responses. There are also persons upstairs. Do you have a microphone upstairs? Okay, so while I get a microphone upstairs, let me start. I will come upstairs and take two questions. Let me take two questions from this side. There's a gentleman in suit here. There is another gentleman in an African print shirt. The ladies, where are you? Where? With the permission of the chairman, I'll come to you. Yes, sir.
Hello, yeah. Your Excellencies, thank you for this nice and good delivery. I'm Kofi Obiang-Iribi, representing Ghana Institution of Surveyors and Quantity Surveyor for that matter. The wind of digitization is blowing, and if my memory serves me right, it looks like something was left out. I would like to find out when this digital revolution affects infrastructure, or for that matter, the construction industry, the whole. When would we see full-blown e-procurement, e-contract or project administration, and e-payment? That once work is executed, you will sit in the comfort of your home and your accounts will be credited for work, duly and valuable work done. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another hand up there. So you're asking about digitization of the entire value chain. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My name is Mr. Amujesi, the Vice Chairman of General Agriculture Case Union, but from the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Yeah, the Excellency's presentation on the 100,000 plus affordable housing, which the government is currently about to roll out. My concern is with actually the issue about land, the primary use of the land first before the affordable housing. Because currently there are government lands that are being used, like in case of Syriza, they are being used for research purposes. But before we say Jack, the lands are being just led just for affordable housing. We are not saying affordable housing is not. It's good. We all come from our various homes. But why not maybe take the house to a hinterland or a rural area such that you can develop the area to stem rural urban migration? Than to have land that is already being used for research.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt
you. Bulldozed. Yes, sir.
So specifically, your question is?
That the primary use of the land must be considered with the stakeholders who are already on the land. They must have some discussion and amicably settle it than to, because a lot of governments are being used for other purposes, and sometimes you find encroachers, private entities going in between the government and the agencies and then taking for private purposes. That is my appeal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your
Excellency. There's a gentleman here. So I'll give you the microphone, and then I'll go for another gentleman in an African shirt at the back. I'm being asked towards African shirts.
Thank you very much. So, Chairman, I'm a freight forwarder. I've been in the business for over 25 years. I must say today I'm so excited about the presentation we just made. And it's been something we've been talking about for some time now. And the effects on our businesses, I just can't imagine that. But at the same time, I'd like to use this forum to advise freight forwarders to also meet the government midway. The concessions being made by the government, for example, reducing the examinations from 90% to 10%. I'm very sure some people will try to take some advantage of my goods not being examined and maybe they describe or add some other quantities into their containers. I think that when you see some of these, please don't be discouraged. Let us rather go ahead and punish them so that we will still maintain this 10%. It is something that's been on the drawing board for a very long time, but then we go, then we come back, we go, then come back because we are not too sure, or there will be a report that we have lost millions of cities and we will never go forward. But please, let's not be deterred. Let us rather put some measures in place and punish those who go against this. Mr. Chairman, Oliver asked for, you would love that the rate of exchange can we peg it for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months, for the next 1 year, so that our dear importers can plan? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I called on the gentleman, yes, that gentleman there. So you would take the next question, and then I'll go to the right before going upstairs. Can we take the microphone here? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Henry Anim Somwa. I'm a concerned farmer. I'm really impressed with the brains we have on the economic management team, and especially their background in economics. I'm a student of economic history, and countries that has formed using agriculture has gone through a phase we are in today. And the transformation and the wind blowing, we need to also look at agriculture. Fundamentally, if I use price support, input price support, to support agriculture modernization, the economic management will understand this language. The deadweight losses would always be higher than the consumer welfare. Secondly, it is going to be difficult for financial management. And I think Ghana has experienced that since 2008. So my question is, what transformation are we doing in agriculture to ensure that the gain from planting for food and jobs will not be eroded, but rather would lead to private sector investments that would modernize agriculture for me and my younger brothers? Thank you.
Thank you. See, the Greek minister busily writing. There's a lady who caught my eye. Yes, madam. And then I'll be biased to one more woman on that side. So please, let's give her the microphone.
Hello. Your Excellency, the Vice President. My name is Christian Alai from Makola Market Traders Association.
Yeah.
Yesterday, my colleagues gave me a long list of questions, but it seems you answered all the questions. I have a long list here, but I wish to thank you very much. And I'm pleading with you that tomorrow by this time, all that you promised should be fulfilled. Thank you very much. I'm going back to tell them that Asempebi Ayati, Oje. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm looking for one more woman on that side. One more woman on that side. One more woman on that side. If I can't find a woman, there's a woman here before I go upstairs. Can we please, madam, please come down. Do I have a microphone upstairs? Okay, so let me take one while I wait for her to come down. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Honorable Opuan Nkrumah. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for the delivery. My name is Prince Ishmael Dima from Sisala East in Upper West region. When you were delivering, and I know the people of Upper West are so happy when you mentioned the road network, and you mentioned $1.5 billion. The two Sisala districts, since the inception of 1992, have been the most worst in terms of road network. We have complained bitterly in the past government, but we have not seen any improvement. And when you mentioned the 1.5, I know, even though I'm not there, they are happy and dancing. We want to beg you that when the road network is about to begin, consider the people of Sisala East and Sisala West. We are terribly affected by the road network. Our food delivery is bad. Mr. Opuan Nkrumah, let me add that since 1992, in the 2016, we went back home as the youth of our area, delivered for the first time the 2 seats, the MPP. And today,
your question.
Yes, we want our roads to be worked on. That is my question. The second one, let me finish. The second one is the Takoradi. I work in Takoradi, so I want to plead for Takoradi. When you come to Power Grant, the road, there's a very huge traffic, and we want an interchange to be put on the Power Grant. Thank you very much.
You're asking for Sisa and Takrady at the same time.
Yes.
There's a woman upstairs. Go to her after you. Let's hear you, madam.
Yes, thank you very much. His Excellency, I'm Ejewa from Okanshi, Wisak. And what we want to ask...
Ejewa, what is Wisak?
Wisak, Wholesalers, Importers, Shop Union of Ghana. So it comprises importers, shop owners, and wholesalers. Our problem about the duty is the pen of the dollar. If after all this and the dollar is not pegged, I think when the dollar goes up, we will still face the same problems we've been through. So if the AMT can work on that for us. And secondly, there is a new, it was there is this state warehousing that is being put on our duty papers. The way it's calculated before, if your contract comes in, it's quoted like 75 Ghana for a 40 feet and 40 Ghana for a 20 feet. But now the way this state housing charges being calculated, I think it's still going to add value to whatever the CCVR will come up to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam, I'll come to you, and then I'll come for response before the last 2 rounds. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Nadake from the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana. My question is, when will we have a woman financial management brain as part of the economic management team? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, in Chi, they say, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So we sort of have a number of questions which we can. I'll go to the Minister for Food and Agriculture to talk about how to ensure that we will not lose any gains from the planting for food and jobs.
Thank you, Excellency. Dr. Somwa is a concerned farmer, he says. But I know he's more than a concerned farmer, very much into agriculture. The question is how to protect the gains made through planting for food and jobs that the EMT is very much concerned about. Dr. Somwa, I can assure you that the commitment not only of the EMT, but of this government to agriculture is total. I spent 8 years in a position in Parliament talking on behalf of party in Parliament. And I saw the kinds of policies which were adopted which did not get us anywhere with our agricultural performance. This government has come on and is tackling the problems at its roots. That is to say, the majority of farmers who are only small farmers, 1 hectare, 2 hectares, they are the ones that we have targeted to support initially. The fact of the matter is that in terms of the improved seed and fertilizer, only about 10% of Ghanaian smallholders do use these 2 major inputs. And that is one of the reasons why Ghana has one of the lowest productivity in agriculture. You take yield any crop, including our own cocoa, we were doing very badly. And this is why this government has decided that we will tackle the problem with the smallholders who still produce over 90% of our agricultural output. And not just by rhetoric. You look at the amount of resources that are going into the smallholder sector compared to previous years. You can't even begin to compare. That we have, for the first time, 2017, when we came on, were able to distribute over 250,000 metric tons of fertilizer to smallholders. And the highest before then had been only 150,000. And this figure has been going up in the 2 years since. That this year we're targeting over 350 to 380,000 metric tons of fertilizer distribution to these farmers, and also to increase the amount of seeds, improved seeds that we are giving to these farmers. And within that, we are emphasizing specific crops, like rice, for instance, which is costing us nearly $1.5 billion to import. We are determined that in the next 3-4 years, no longer import rice. We're targeting it both in the traditional areas of the savannah and in the forest areas of the 6 regions in the southern part of the country, where there's huge potential for rice, which has been lying there unexploited. This government is doing something very fundamental about that. So all of these are, I would say, irreversible, because you can see the results. We are exporting over 130,000 metric tons of food last year to our neighboring countries. 17 different crops, from fruits to plantain to anything. It's going up and up, all the way to Nigeria, to Niger, to Burkina Faso, and so on. Our challenge now is, how are we going to add value to the surpluses, the management of the surpluses? We anticipated this. This is why government decided that we are going to establish 80 warehouses, construct 80 warehouses around the country in the food producing areas. These warehouses, hope by June, July, they will be ready to be handed over to us for use with the buffer stock company and so on. So we are adding to infrastructure, we are expanding the distribution to farmers, all these, and as the Vice President mentioned, we have established the stock the commodity exchange, which is a novelty. We are establishing at the moment a draft bill going to our cabinet for consideration for a multi-crop production improvement authority, which will take care in the development of 6 major tree crops, so that in the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we will be receiving more revenue from these new crops than cocoa for the first time since Tete Kwashi brought cocoa to Ghana. All these are indications of the kinds of commitment that the government, the EMT, and the government itself, President, is very particular that there must be this permanent transformation in our agriculture as a basis for the industrial revolution that we're expecting to happen in order to lift our people out of poverty. So that is the commitment that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think someone from CSR asked about the primary use of land in terms of affordable housing, and also the Ghana Institute of Surveyors asked about construction industry and whether we'll do e-procurement and e-payment as part of the digitization. Minister for Monitoring, do you want to attempt those?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The two issues are e-procurement and then the land issue. I think my friend from the CSI IR is right. Government should, and I think government should negotiate with the prime landowners before they do these huge acquisitions for affordable housing. My understanding, though, is that the emphasis on the affordable housing is going to be in the rural areas, which will be easier for you. On the e-procurement, I think the Minister of Finance may be able to answer that better. I have second-hand information, but I know they're working.
Yes. I know that the PPA has begun the implementation of an e-procurement system, but I think what they also want to see is the digitization of the payment process for various certificates they submit. And I'm sure the Ministry of Finance can look into that. There were a couple of questions on the exchange rate at ports. I think we can look at that. Sino Hydro Sisala districts should not be ignored. Similarly with the Takrady Power Grant interchange. You know that we are going to also be cutting the sword as well as the Tamale interchange to the PTC interchange in Takrady. I don't know whether that is the same as the Power Grant. Minister for Roads, is it the same as the Power Grant? There is a PTC interchange, I remember, which is on the list of roads we are going to. I don't know if it is the same. That's the Power Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Yes, if we cut the sword for the PTC interchange, it will stretch to that side. So the program is talking about will be resolved. Okay. And after 10 from Tamale, the next sword cutting is tapping the PTC interchange. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister for Road. He's been working tirelessly, I must say, to make sure this whole Sino-Hydro happens. I want to thank you for it. He's been really tireless at it. He's been working very, very hard. I appreciate what he's doing. The state warehousing calculation, we will look at that as part of what we are looking at the ports. So let's take another set of questions. The senior minister will say something.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think a lady posed a question about the implementation of these measures. It's a very important question. Now, if you ask for a benchmark price to be reduced by 50%, people are to implement it. People already are taking advantage of the 100% and benefiting directly from it. If you ask for 10% of containers to be open instead of 20%, there are people who are interested in opening 9% for whatever gain comes to them. And therefore, we need to have in place a special task force to support the implementation of these measures, and we shall surely do so. So that people will not set aside these side rules we are putting in place. Because of our benefits, we must have a task force to implement these. And lady, I can assure you, we will do so. Thank you very much.
I think there was also a question on when there will be a woman on the EMT. The advice has been well received. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellency, I'm not reporting, but I've seen the GRA boss and the customs boss here. You may want to give them some instructions right afterwards. I'm going to take 2 each as we go around in the final set of questions. I'm going to start from here. Yes, I see. Yes, sir, you. One more, and then I'll take you in the African Prince. I've been biased towards the easy enough, so I'll take the 2 of you. Yeah. Yes, I see your hand in the African Prince here, and then I'll take the man in smoke here.
Well, I'm holding the mic, and I'm here.
Hold on, sir. You don't interrupt like that. Hold on. We'll go in that order. So let's start with you, sir. I'll come to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Your Excellency, for this very comprehensive overview of the past 2 years of your government. Mine is actually a call for action, and it has to do with the trade facilitation.
Can you please introduce yourself, sir? We want to know
My name is Ziad Hamwi. I am the National President of the Borderless Alliance for Ghana, and I speak for the advocacy groups who deal with regional integration and trade facilitation. And I would like to bring your attention an update from yesterday, as the Parliament of the Ghana has ratified the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, bringing the total ratifications to the 22 number, which is the required number for the entry into force of that agreement, which has the potential to create an African market of 1.3 billion people and up to $3 trillion in GDP. And so I am bringing this to the attention of the Council of the Economic Management team due to the fact that last year Ghana has placed its bid to host the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And the reason I'm bringing this to the attention of His Excellency is the fact that we as civil society organizations and advocacy groups are very prepared to work towards ensuring the success of the bid to host that secretariat in order to support the transformation of Ghana into the preferred destination for doing business on the continent.
So your question, sir? Your question?
It was a call for action, and so it is an appeal to further and to collaborate. Thank you, sir.
Grateful. The gentleman in the blue kaftan down here. There's a gentleman in the blue kaftan here. Don't worry, we'll come back for some more questions. So there's a gentleman in the blue kaftan, then I'll come to the middle, then I'll come here. Go up.
Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, my question is about the health insurance. I'm Nana Onyame from Takumasi. The government did well, cutting out duties and all those things. But when I clear my goods from the port, I supply to the hospitals. And the National Health Insurance to pay the hospitals so that they also paid me. You don't pay, so you also intend not to supply again. If a patient goes to the hospital, they will write even APC or common gloves to go out from the counter. They bring it to my shop. Method gloves, but the examination gloves is packed. In one pack is 100 pieces inside. So you can't open it and give them 2 or 3. So you're supposed to buy the whole packet, and it will go waste. So I'm pleading to the government, if they have digitized the NHS card, they should also pay the suppliers or the hospitals so that they can also pay the suppliers so that the government business will go smoothly, as the Kufu administration was doing before. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a gentleman in smoke here. There's a gentleman in smoke here. There's a gentleman in smoke here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Your Excellency, the Vice President and the Economic Management Team, I think let me applaud you for the job done. Yesterday we were in a crunch meeting. I'm Association Said Momin from Association of Small Scale Industries. Yes, after get the invitation from the Ministry of Trade, we had a crunch meeting. There were so many questions that I was coming to ask. But when I came down and saw what was happening, all the questions are dropped. Because why I'm saying that is, we create about 70 to 80% job creation in the country, the SM, micro, medium, and small enterprises. And for that matter, it is something that I have to look at it very serious. If actually you want to create more jobs, those seeking the other jobs, as I'm standing, I have about 25 people, workers that mean, some 10, some 5 and 3 and other things. So we are looking at it that our only headache as at now, even though this might not connect with your destination, is the MMSE policy that is on the drawing board. We want Ghana to get it.
For those who don't know MMSC policy,
medium and micro, medium and small enterprises policy, which Ghana have not yet gotten. So I'm pleading with you, the government, to do that. And this today, the voiceless have now got the opportunity to say something. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a gentleman in an African print shirt at the back, so I'll take him, come here, and then I'll go upstairs. We'll take responses and come for the final round.
Your Excellency, the Vice President, I know we are aware that in Ghana we have religious bodies, which is now we call Ghana Conference of Religion for Peace. I would suggest that when there is a time you sit down to see certain things in Ghana, I plead that you should think of the religious bodies, the Ghana Conference of Religions for Peace, GCROP, and I will be very happy about that. So I suggest that this economic management team, I would like to see the religious bodies on it.
Also, for you ambushed us. But I'll go back, yes, to the gentleman in the African print shirt standing. Then I'll take 2 here. I'll go upstairs and take 2.
Your Excellency, the economic management team, I think I will speak on the exchange rate depreciation.
Can we have some silence in the hall, please?
I just want to find out that when you travel outside country, and I believe all of us are very much aware, it's very, very difficult to change dollars in those respective countries. For example, even South Africa, you cannot change dollars into rand there. A lot of countries are practicing this. What can Ghana do to also avert some of these problems? Again, are we regulating the black market operators also? How are we regulating them? It's very sad that we go to Tudu and other areas, you find selling these hard currencies on the streets of Accra as if we're selling, excuse me to say, tomatoes. How are we going to regulate their activities? If we're able to even regulate them as well, we might even have some sort of taxes from them, because it looks as if all of them are running away from the tax net. So what are we doing to regulate their activities? Okay. Again, is it possible we can change or review the 100% repatriation of interest, 100% of interest of profits in the GIPC, that's the Ghana Investment Promotion Center Act? If it's possible, then let's find a way, because most of these corporate companies are repatriating the profits out of our shores. And even if you are talking about repatriation of profit, how are we even checking them? Possibly even their principal or their capital might also be part of the repatriation as part of their profit.
Thank you, sir. I want to take a few more questions. Is that the Guta president? Okay, so let's take him. Is there a lady here? One more. Yes, sir, I'll come to you. I see my friends from the media houses showing their hands. We'll try and give you some questions at the end. We want to hear from the various first, so we'll try. Yes, sir.
Your Excellency, your government indeed is a listening one. Whatever you said here was as if you were saying the same things that I've been saying on air. It means that whatever thing I say on air registered in your head.
But who are
and
you?
then
Please
you find
introduce
solution.
yourself properly.
I am the president of Ghana Union of Traders Association, Dr. Tifobin. Your Excellency, you have given us paperless system which saves us time-related costs. And now you have given us real value cost reduction. And we do appreciate. We thank you and your ever accessible EMT. We thank the president himself for the kind gesture. We thank the Council of State, through whose intervention we've gotten this stage. A great lesson learned here is that positive dialogue is the key to good governance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is there a question following that so that I can take a few more?
Okay, let me run it. I wanted to say something.
Very quickly, there are several questions.
Okay, what I want us to do is, as soon as possible, arrange with customs and GRE to make out the modalities so that we can quick start it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'll take one quick one. There's a gentleman in white here. There's another gentleman in white here in a white African print shirt. There's a gentleman in white. Let me take him. And then we would take responses and come final round. Okay? I'll come up to you upstairs. Don't worry.
Thank you very much. My name is Siawan Padu from Abosoka, co-chairman of Paper Association. Your Excellency, on behalf of traders from Abosokan, we say thank you very much for having listened to this brilliant presentation. Indeed, you are a listening government. But I have one challenge. That is foreigners issue. We've been talking, quarreling, fighting over the years about foreigners who are taking over our businesses. Retail trading. When you go to Kumasi Kwame, Circle, Bosokai, Okaishi, Sunya, over. If your rent is due, you cannot take over the shop again because the foreigner is there marking time, taking over your businesses. And we are saying the foreigners should go go back to their countries because they do a whole of mine. So please, Your Excellency, what measures are you going to put in place so that we, the retailers, will do our trading or remain in the business forever? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take responses and then I'll come round for the final round. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. I think the Minister for Trade and Industry can handle the free trade agreement, continental free trade agreement, and also the retail market. Thank you. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. First, let me state that one of the most critical challenges confronting our continent, and by extension Ghana, is the low level of intra-regional trade. Currently, intra-European trade is estimated at about 68%. Europe is around 53%. Asia is around 46%. And regrettably, intra-African trade is around 12%. And without equivocation, it is clear that if you want to develop, you first start with your regional trade and then you use that as a basis for integrating into the global market. So one of the most significant developments on our continent is the establishment of the Continental Free Trade Area. So Ghana and 54 other countries have signed a new agreement to create a single market for Africa, which is probably the most significant development since the establishment of the African Union. Now, this is going to create a market of a population of course, 1.2 billion. It is estimated that over $35 billion increase in volume of trade would occur with the establishment of this Continental Free Trade Area. And already 53 countries out of 55 countries have signed on to this agreement. But the agreement requires 22 countries to ratify the agreement for it to become operationally effective. And so today, I think we all need to celebrate as a continent, because the 22nd country, which is Gambia, has now ratified the agreement, which technically speaking makes it possible for us now to activate the new Continental Free Trade Agreement for Africa. It means that all things that we are talking about in Ghana, expand our industrial base, this is going to be an opportunity for us to sell to other parts of Africa duty-free, quota-free. I think that we, as a country, this is good news, and hopefully if we are selected as the Secretariat for the Continental Free Trade Agreement, then it will also become another feather in the cap of our country. So I think this was the point that was being made by the first speaker. Now, with respect to the issue of foreigners, the Ghana Union of Traders Associations and the Ministry of Trade and Industry have been working actively on this matter. And I'm sure the fact that there's not that much tension in the retail trade arena, I think it's a reflection of the contribution of GUTA in particular in supporting government to find a way of addressing the influx of foreigners in our retail trade on a sustainable basis. Now, I can say also that this matter now is before Parliament. Parliament has established a joint committee of the Select Committee on Trade and Industry and Tourism and Defense and Security for this matter now to be interrogated on a more permanent basis. So I can assure you that it's under very serious and active consideration, and hopefully we'll find a permanent solution to this challenge. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you. I think that there was also a question on making sure we are up to date with national things, any delays. So I'm sure the Minister of Finance will take that on advice and make sure if there are any delays, we don't have them. The Senior Minister, can you respond to the whole issue of our exchange rate regime being a bit too loose? People can just buy forex or sell forex, unlike in South Africa. What would you have to say on that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. That observation is really true and very important. Yesterday, I tried to change dollars in Dakar into their currency. My passport was taken, details taken from the passport, etc., etc. And you couldn't just put the dollar there and be given the equivalent in the CFA. In Ghana, however, people are trading in our currency and in the dollar without any sufficient regulation. And this is undermining the economy. And I think Bank of Ghana, the EMT, should sit together with the security agents to look at the current laws governing this exchange rate business. Forex bureaus are governed by and controlled by Bank of Ghana, and they have rules of operation. These people are not forex bureaus, but they are operating as if there are no rules and regulations in Ghana. And Mr. Vice President, I think this is wrong. And we should handle the national security so that we apply the rules which all other countries do. When you go to a country and you want to exchange dollars for that currency and vice versa, you must go through some regimentation. In Ghana, it is not so. And therefore, it is not right. And I think your observation is well in that. Members of the EMT has been talking about it. But we need that cooperation between EMT, Bank of Ghana, and the security agencies to put a stop to this illegal business. It is illegal because they are not forest bureaus. So I think it's a warning to us, and we take your challenge and assure you that by the middle of this month, today's date, 3rd, by the middle of this month, Bank of Ghana and the National Security Agency will come out with some guidelines so that we take steps to protect our currency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senior Minister. One of the things about the French countries around us is that they are very formalized in terms of identity. Everybody has a unique identity, and you cannot do any type of transaction without your national ID number attached to it. In a situation where we are so informal, it's a bit more difficult, whether it's SIM card registration or forex cases, so on. But I believe that once we conclude the national ID card, our system will be more enforceable with all of these regulations. I think the religious bodies, the Ghana Conference for Religions for Peace. I think you are requesting a membership of the EMT. The senior minister will also handle it.
I think the EMT members must be happy that the religious group want to join us. And I think it shows that they admire the type of job we are doing, the areas we are covering. So will the Ghana Institution of Engineers, so will the Ghana Bar Association, so will many of the other professional and religious bodies want to. And it cannot be done that way. What we do, what we have done, is to also invite some of you to meet us to discuss your concern and to take your input in managing economy. I think the secretary to the EMT is here. I will let him take your details, and I think along the line we invite you to meet the whole group, and we will continue to dialogue with you and any other group who are interested in having an input into the EMT. Look, on Ghana Beyond Aid, I have received 25 memoranda, well researched and well written by Ghanaian interested groups. They are not members of the committee on Ghana Beyond Aid, but they are contributing effectively to the committee's work. And therefore, we are appealing to all professional bodies who may have an input into the work of EMT in one way or the other to show interest and to write to us. And we surely appropriately invite you and have discussions with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senior Minister. I think one person on the EMT who has been so forceful on the role of faith-based institutions is our Minister for Finance. So, Minister for Finance, I think this is really your area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I guess it's, Mr. Vice President, this is an encouragement for, religious leaders to get into politics, because you have to be a member of parliament or a minister to be on the EMT, and it's encouraged. But obviously, as you can see, we take religious views very seriously, because that's 9% or so of the country. And there's at no point in time that we undervalue that relationship. And on my advisory board at the ministry, we do have representation from the religious bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. I also want to share, for example, when we were in a session, we put together a team to look at value for money, and wanted to see how we could standardize the construction of schools, of hospitals, and of roads. We were looking for institutions that were able to get value for money, and we invited, for example, the Church of Pentecost to come in and share, because they seem to complete a lot of buildings without spending too much money. And they came in and gave the EMT very, very good input. And I think the senior minister who led that value for money committee, they finished the work with the input, and we are going to be very soon announcing standardized buildings for schools across the country, standardized bills of quantities, schools, hospitals, and some roads, so that we can bring down the cost of this construction. And we are also going to be, thanks to that committee, announcing mandatory use of local building materials in some of those constructions, so that we can use so the churches have a lot of, and the religious organizations have a lot to contribute to our development, and we will keep listening. Thank you very much. So we can take a next set of questions.
Excellency, we're going to take the final list of questions. I've seen some of the media colleagues, their hands up, so let me quickly give them an opportunity. Yes, Mr. Timmy. Yes, Mr. Youngson. Dr. Kofi Amor, you are reorganizing for. You have a question? Okay, so I'll give you an opportunity and then I'll take one final one and then I'll go upstairs. Yes, quickly.
Excellency, my name is Kweku Timin. I believe one of the ministers who have not spoken today is John Peter Amewu. If it comes to energy, the key issue is Dumso. I want to find out, His Excellency, we are a beautiful country that generates over 4,000 megawatts. We have the capacity. However, we use just about 2,700. So how come my power intermittently goes off? And then I have the assurance that I cannot export to other neighboring countries. When I put the mathematics together, I simply don't understand. So, Honorable Minister, please come and answer these questions for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Youngson has his hand up. We'll take one question from him. We'll go to Dr. Amo and then we'll go here before going upstairs. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
My name is Kojo Youngson. I'm from Joy News. Earlier, when you were taking us through some of the figures, how the economy is looking, I was alarmed to notice that we had spent about 3.2% of GDP bailing out banks. But what alarmed me even more was the knowledge that those who presided over this catastrophe are still walking around. Some of them are still being paid by us, the taxpayers. Money went into bailing out these banks. So can you please tell us what you plan to do about this and why we haven't seen any action against these individuals so far? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Amo, you had your hand up.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that in the opening prayers by Reverend, he made a very fundamental philosophical statement that let's be the generation that laid the foundation for the transformation of our nation. Now, sometimes you hear people are saying there's no money in the system and all that. But I think this morning, the positive direction of the government seems to be heading in the right direction. There are certain things that take time to manifest the positives of that policy. And therefore, if we are going to be the generation to lay the foundation for the transformation of our nation, I think some form of patience is required. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Do you have a microphone up there? You still don't have a microphone? Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Very one down here, and then I'll go upstairs.
My name is Dr. Emmanuel Ojurifri. I'm a development finance economist. And my question is on the level of capital expenditure. Your Excellency, sir, one of these government key criticisms of the former government has been the low level of capital expenditure. However, we work a lot with data in economics, and as reported in the budget, we can tell that your administration really much has not fared any better in a sense, and I'd like to find out your response on this.
Fared better in area exactly?
Capital expenditure.
Capex. Okay. All right. There's a lady in the t-shirt upstairs. I'll take you first, and then I'll take one more. Could you, is your mic working? Is that microphone working? Very quickly, very quickly. Your Excellency, let me come to you as we take responses to the final set of questions. We'll just take those last two subsequently. So we come to you as we take responses.
Okay. Minister for Energy, there's a question on Dumso. Why are we having our power lights off? There's Dumso on the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and also thank the gentleman who asked this very brilliant question. Why huge install capacity of 4,700 and over with a peak demand of just about 2,600, yet still we have intermittent shortfall and slide? That's a very brilliant question. Mr. Vice President, our energy mix in this country cuts across hydro, renewable in terms of sun, gas, which is the thermal, and also light crude oil, and also heavy fuel and diesel. In our current tariff that we are paying, the tariff has been driven largely because out of this energy mix, large proportion being priced on gas. If we are going to turn on a plant that is going to be fed on heavy fuel or light crude oil or diesel, that will bring an added cost to the existing tariff regime. Largely about 660 megawatts of our plant relied on gas. So when we shut down the gas plants at Takoradi to make provisions for the tie-in that we are undertaking, it means all these plants that are relying on gas, Ameri, TICO, KTTB, will no longer have access to feed on gas. But what we have done is through the benevolence of the Ministry of Finance, sufficient fund was made available to procure light crude oil, diesel, heavy fuel for plants that relied on both gas and fuel. Some plants are dualized. When the plant is dualized, what it is that it can feed both on light crude or gas. All these plants that I've mentioned do not have that capacity, only rely on gas. So the shortfall we are seeing currently, it's as a result of the migration largely from the gas-fired plant to the light crude, heavy fuel, and then also the diesel plant. We have sufficient diesel currently in the stock of Tema Oil Refinery and most of this plant. I want to assure Ghanaians and also all the listeners gathered here, the participants, that first of all, we want to apologize for this intermittent supply, but we are never back to the era where we have consistent, persistent shortfall in supply. We are in an era that there is installed capacity available, but what we need to do is change that installed capacity to availability. As a government, we continue to pay for gas that is available but cannot be used. As government continue to pay for heavy fuel to fire a plant that can equally rely on gas for cheaper source of fuel. And so what His Excellency has directed we do is to move the plants that are feeding on heavy fuel from Tema to Takoradi. The question one will ask is, if you have sufficient gas in Takoradi, where would you go and put a plant in Tema? I don't want to answer those questions. Ghanaians will be able to answer it. If I have the opportunity, then I will not put the plant in Tema. I will put the plant near to the source of gas. Because when the gas travels from Takoradi to Tema, it is also not free. It costs about $2.7 dollars per MMB just for the tariff. For 1 month, the traveling cost of gas costs this country in a range of about $60 million US. That is just the tariff for the volume of gas that you shipped from Takoradi to Tema. The best thing, therefore, is that to avoid this cost, let us move the plant from Tema to Takoradi. This is a very good management idea. Mr. Vice President, the stranded gas, as I have talked about, also means that you have gas, but again, you are feeding on other expensive fuel. So what do? Because some of the plants are still in Tema that you cannot move, The only ones we are moving are the mobile ones. There are some that are fixed. You cannot move them. What do you have to do? Okay, those that are fixed, let's therefore move some gas from Takoradi to the fixed price. That again is cheaper because it reduces the cost more than 7%. And so it calls for what we call the tie-in. The tie-in just allows us to be able to flow gas. Currently, we can flow gas from Nigeria through Tema to Takoradi, but you cannot flow gas in the reverse direction. So the current tie-in just allows us to move the stranded gas to Tema. By doing so, we have to stop the flow of gas. The stoppage of the flow of gas take away almost about 650 megawatts of our plant. This explains the intermittent shortfall that we have witnessed. Fortunately, Mr. Vice President, I have an opportunity to visit the site, and I can assure the good people of this country that work is progressing. The best thing we can do is make sure that we speed up this process. And I can assure them that by the 12th of April, we will complete the tie-in. What good thing is tie-in also doing? We are not only just tie-in, cutting, and joining people estimate. We have also begun to expand the current capacity of 130 to over 405 standard cubic meters of gas per day. That's an expansion that we've done. Another thing we have also done is to provide opportunities for the future, because we are forward-looking government. We are not looking at elections. We are looking at the future. So we begin to provide opportunities for future expansion. The government idea of one district, one factory had made us to add more valves so that in future, power agencies or other industries that want to rely on gas can easily tap in without shutdown. Without shutdown, because we are learning from our period. So Ghanaians, we are sorry, this short period is just intermittent. And I can promise you that from 12th of April, when the tie-in is completed, you will continue to enjoy sustainable use of your power. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. It looks like you were expecting the question. You answered it so well. Thank you very much. We have a question, maybe the Minister for Finance, on the bailout and the people who are walking around free. So what do you want to say?
Mr. Vice President, I certainly don't look like the AG, but I think it's an issue that the central bank is dealing with and has sent all the appropriate information that it needs to send to the security agencies. So like you, we spend, some 12 billion cedis or so in that, and it's 12 billion that I'd rather use for other things, such as capital expenditure. There was a question on capital expenditure, and I think we are spending about 4.3% of our GDP currently.
Yes.
But if you look at what we are going to add of some hydro, that's another 2%. You know, and then we are also securitizing get fund to be able to do so. That's another 1.5 billion. So that takes us to over 9%. Now, there's also now a real philosophical issue about how to categorize education and whether it is just goods and services or whether it is real capital expenditure. You know, and I think the thinking is beginning to feel clearly that that's CALEX. And that's why the President on all of these issues of senior high and how to get technical education for us. Because with that is really the rubric of the infrastructure that we need for the future. So when you look at it, you say that we may be even close to 10% or more as we are currently doing. Thank you very
much. So we take the next set of questions.
Actually, Excellency, we're left with just two final questions. There was a lady first who we earlier identified, and then we'll give the gentleman the last word. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just want to ask this from the Energy Minister, that whilst we are waiting for these 12th April thing, can't you or the energy sector give us a schedule so that we will be aware when our power would go off and when our power will come. And again, to the Vice President, your microeconomic indicators were good, but I want to ask that, of course, when we go out, the opposition is going to say that, see, you said a lot, but the question is, how is it translating into our pockets? So please tell us how these indicators would actually translate into our pockets.
I'll give the gentleman the final word. Yes, sir.
My name is James Kofiotu, concerned citizen from Commander Negua for Abrim. Yeah, fantastic delivery by the Vice President, His Excellency Dr. Baumia. Fantastic work by the EMT. I appreciate the work so much. In fact, my question goes to the Trade Minister, also from that area. About last month ago, I heard this Bakers Association of Bread Bakers Association of Ghana, Kumasi chapter, complaining about the CD depreciation because they import sugar. This government is a doing government. He has started the work that predecessors did. He has started the work doing. To ask what they are going to do about the Commander Sugar Factory, because youth there needs employment. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody here for all your questions. I'm sure we can give everybody a big round of applause for the kind of questions that have been excellent.
Thank you very much. Peter, Minister for Energy, is there a schedule?
Mr. Vice President, yes, we've directed the various agencies to provide information to areas that would not experience lights being on. Mr. Vice President, it's also important to know that these agencies have their own internal mechanism. For instance, in Ashanti region, most of these areas have already been informed to the shutdown. I'm quite surprised why some of the areas are not receiving those information here in Accra, because I always have it on my notice. They send me a notice that these areas would not, be able to experience a light on. But Mr. Vice President, we still insist, from looking at the participants, the need, still insist that we intensify, some work so that the people who will be out of light, of course, they will be made to be aware that they will not experience light during the period.
Thank you very much. Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation, we say we have good macroeconomic indicators, and how do we translate that into the pockets of people?
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice. I thought you would give it to the Minister of Finance. But since you asked me to, I'll try and mention a few areas. I pay a lot of school fees in my constituency. And I know that since the free SHS came, the number of people coming to me for school fees has gone down. So in my pocket, at least, I can feel it. And I'm sure a lot of parents are feeling it. It is true that when the macro fundamentals are good, we expect it to translate into the macro. I think Honorable Alan Chematin tried to tell us that the time is coming for all of us to feel it in our pockets. We needed to stabilize macro. But once you get jobs, you'll be feeling it in your pocket. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the other question is on the Commander's Factory. Minister for Trade, that was yours.
Mr. Vice President, I'm sure we are all aware that the Commander Sugar Factory, right from inception, had very serious technical and financial challenges. You have a situation where a factory of size, $35 million valuation at the time that it was completed, but there was no plan or program for the raw material base that would feed to the production process. In that fact, when we took over, The plant itself, technically, although it had been commissioned, it was not in a position to produce refined sugar. The process would go up to a certain stage. You needed to complete the technical configuration before it will run on a profitable basis. So government took a strategic decision at cabinet that, look, this ought not to have happened in the first place, but we are saddled with this, and that we needed to find a way out to reduce our losses. So we commissioned a new exercise to attract some other strategic investors. So I'm pleased to announce that this has been going on for some time. And last week, we had a short list of about 4 companies with, well, I would say, attractive proposals. And now we are in a position to recommend to Cabinet for a final selection of a new strategic investor who hopes to be able to integrate the plantation development into the factory that is sitting idle. And so hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'm sure that there will be a public announcement on that. And Commander should be back in terms of its long-term sustainability. Thank you. Excellent.
The Minister for Finance will add a few comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. I think the question about how it translates into our pockets is truly a very important question. And it's important because I would want us to understand where we were, as the Vice President has said, and where we are, and truly where we want to go. And to also appreciate sort of the sacrifices that we all have to make in that interim period. And when you see the amount of work that has been described by the EMT, it is clear as to the vision that the President wants and the type of work that is going on. And there will be honest mistakes, on the way. Clearly, the focus on our human capital so that there will be social justice in the distribution of what we have. A key thing to make us ready for the future, I think, are those things that we need to contemplate. And we need to build a broad consensus such that the margins that we agree are really shrunk. You go to Norway and there's literally 80-85% consensus on what the citizen's role is and where the country is going. So that when we talk about opposition, it's not destructive and it does not sow seeds of an unequal distribution. So we see an economy, for me at the Ministry of Finance, is how do we keep this economy stable so that the individual entrepreneur then can get access to finances at rates that we can support. How do we bring these lending rates down, even as the Bank of Ghana continues to make really strong efforts, to help us clean the banking system so the chassis is strong and it can redistribute. How do we ensure that even in that process, Ghanaians are put first, and therefore how do you save some Ghanaian banks who were solvent? I think those are the issues that sometimes we need to contemplate. So yes, we'll continue to look at stabilizing the economy. It's first and foremost, and nobody should really belittle that about you can eat it or you can eat it, etc. Because without that, the capacity to build into the future, jeopardized. So I really, especially for also those in the middle class, to be able to really break down, what has been done and ask questions if I'm in a position and I tell you something, to really throw back the question to that person. Because if I look at the indices that were shown, 2014, 2016, and 2018, for us to then pretend that really nothing has happened and you take a marginal issue and blow it into state, that does not help us. I think it's a disservice to the Republic. But for us, we will continue to work, looking beyond elections, to make sure that every Ghanaian is part of this new transformation and opportunity that the President has given a mandate to do. Thank you very much, sir.
You want to say something? The senior minister has called back. He wants to say something.
Mr. Vice President, sometimes people play politics with indicators to a very ridiculous end. And we must, particularly if you have this level of audience, try to put meaning to these indicators. Without oil, President Kufuor moved the growth of the economy from 3.7 to 9.2 without oil. GDP is nothing more than the total productivity of the whole economy, everybody's input included. That's the measurement of GDP. Without oil, then oil hitting, and it went up naturally to 14.1 thereabout. With the oil continuously flowing, the GDP is brought down to 3.4. There must be something wrong with the management of the economy. There must be something fundamentally wrong with the management of the economy. And if anybody who's brought down the growth from 14% there around to 3.4, and within 2 years is taken to 7.5 and heading towards 8, want to be given the chance to manage the economy again? See, we've got to be practical. Money in your pocket means the economy growing. When you grow, you create employment. That's the meaning of growth. So when somebody manages to bring it to that level, it was creating employment. Now the way things are going, IMF former managing director made a point. He said inflation is the enemy of the poor. And that is what it is. When inflation goes up, purchasing power and all this of everybody gets reduced because the rate of prices are going up higher than what is coming into your pocket. The rich can afford it, but the poor keeps on losing on it. So if you have a government that's bringing down inflation constantly, it is enriching the poor. And therefore, we should not make it look like these indicators mean nothing. They mean something. They mean something. And I would want all of us here to, and on behalf of my colleagues, say a very big thank you to the type of leadership the EMT has enjoyed from Dr. Bawumia. A chairman who is so involved in the work of he works like a member, like a secretary. It's sterling quality, professionally excellent. So we are where we are because Dr. Bawumia is putting up a very professional chairmanship to the EMT. And I pray that we continue to work together as a team. Because this is in the interest of Ghana, not the individual. When the economy improves, all other things improve. And the duty of the manager of the economy to make sure that the economy improves. And the EMT for now is exactly that. Thank you very much.
I think the senior minister has started the vote of thanks for us. Your Excellency the Vice President, members of the EMT, first we want to say thank you that you have elected, you didn't even agree, you elected to bring the EMT out to meet the Ghanaian public, to explain where we have been so far, and also to take questions and feedback. I think even as we go about this conversation of engaging the citizen, this is a huge demonstration that is unparalleled, whether in the sub-region or on the rest of the continent. I think we can give the EMT a big round of applause. We also want to thank the people of Ghana who have made time across sectors to be here, to listen, to watch both here and on television, and also to give feedback and to raise your questions. We want to thank our friends who are operating from the media, who have carried this event live on multiple networks here in Accra and across the country. We want to thank the Planning Committee, the EMT Secretariat, the staff at the Ministry of Information who have worked tirelessly to the logistics together. We say a big thank you to you all. I want to invite Honorable Pius Hadid to help us do the final protocols and then wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Your Excellency, Vice President, Excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. All that starts well, ends well, and we're also grateful to the police band. You have been here with us. We are grateful to the Supreme Sign Institute. Ours is a government that wants to promote inclusion, and it was important that our friends from the Supreme Sign Institute join us to give us sign language interpretation. We acknowledge our media partners, TV3, GTV, GH1 TV, CTTV, Onuya TV, OTV, Joy News TV, UTV, City FM, Joy FM, Star FM, Ultimate FM, Joy FM, Akuma FM, 3FM, Connect FM, Class FM. It's important. It is through you that the people of Ghana are able to hear us loud and clear. We appreciate you and the several other platforms across the country that have partnered with us to bring this message of hope to the people of Ghana. At this juncture, Your Excellency, may I invite Sheikh Isikwe to give us the closing prayer. Sheikh Isikwe. If you could move the cordless mic to Sheikh so that we... Sheikh, well, you can come. And after the closing prayer, we will stand for the national salute, and may we be assisted to clear the passage. His Excellency and the members of the EMT will go back into the waiting room, and so please let's clear the passage. Sheikh Isikwe, closing prayer.
Indeed, we have made progress. No fear of life indicated by the child. And I think additionally we made progress also at the heart that we chop the best in Africa. And therefore this country is moving and moving towards the realization that everything will be well in the shortest possible time. We are grateful to the Almighty God. We are grateful to all who have made it possible for us actually to achieve this progress. Oh God, we thank you. We thank you for all the things that you've given to this government. We thank you for giving us the brains to meet together, plan, and that's where we have reached so far. And we thank you for us to realize those who lie to us. Because God has given us, we don't, you know, it's a gift of God. It's a gift of God that when you lie against yourself. And when you lie, you come to meet it. And you must be ashamed of lies. Because what you know is that, oh, let us pray.
Oh God, we pray. And we pray for all of you. And we pray for the government of the NPP led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Nana Addo Akufo-Addo is in Accra, in Ghana we say it's Moko. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وله الحمد في الآخرة وهو الحكيم الخبير. اللهم إنا نعوذ من جهد البلاء ودرك الشقاء وشماتة الأعداء وسوء المنزل الذي في الأهل والمال والولد. اللهم لا تدع في مكاننا هذا ذنبا إلا كفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا غائبا إلا رددته ولا كربا إلا كشفته ولا دين إلا قضيته ولا عدوى إلا كفيته ولا فسادا إلا صلته ولا مريدا إلا شفيته ولا خرة سددتها ولا حاجة من هوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها سلام قضيت فإنك تهدي سبيل وتجور كثير وتغني فقير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذابا وأدخلنا جنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين.
Seated as the Vice President and members of the EMT depart, and then we shall follow. Shall we remain standing? Shall we please make way? I see and acknowledge Honorable YB Asamoah, Director of Communication, and members of the communication team. I see you and I recognize you. Honorable YB Asamoah, you do all.
Yam